A man who could buy anything except trust just met the one woman who wouldn't sell herself for any price. But in a world where power is everything, love becomes the most dangerous liability. When his enemies discover his weakness, they'll make him choose his empire or her life. And for the first time, Cade Voss doesn't know which one he can survive without. If you're ready to dive into a story about real love in a ruthless world, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. The woman in the red dress was already dead. She just didn't know it yet. Cade Voss watched her from across the mahogany table, his whiskey untouched, his expression carved from granite. She was beautiful. They always were. Practiced smile, calculated laughs, the kind of eye contact that suggested intimacy while revealing nothing. She'd been playing the part of a visiting investor's daughter for 3 weeks now, attending the right parties, asking the right questions, getting close to the right people. And she was very, very good at it. Too good. "You seem distracted tonight," she purred, leaning forward just enough to make her intentions clear. The diamond necklace at her throat caught the low light. Real diamonds, he noted. Whoever sent her had invested well. "Do I?" Cade's voice was flat, emotionless. He lifted the whiskey glass, studied the amber liquid, then set it down again without drinking. "I was just thinking about something my father used to say." "Oh?" She tilted her head, all manufactured interest. "He said the most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a gun or a knife. It's a beautiful woman who knows how to use both." Cade's eyes finally met hers, and whatever she saw there made her smile falter. "Tell Dimitri his surveillance equipment is outdated. The microphone in that necklace has been broadcasting static for the last 10 minutes. The color drained from her face. "My men will escort you out. You have 24 hours to leave the city." Cade stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. "If you're still here tomorrow night, I'll send you back to Dimitri in pieces. Tell him I said hello." He walked out of the restaurant without looking back, his 2 bodyguards materializing from the shadows to flank him. Behind him, he heard the woman's chair scrape back, heard her rapid breathing, heard the soft sob she couldn't quite suppress. He felt nothing. This was the 4th one in 6 months. 4 different women, 4 different organizations, all with the same basic script. Seduce the untouchable Cade Voss, get inside his world, extract information, exploit weaknesses. The first one had actually been creative, a supposedly traumatized art dealer who needed his protection. The second had posed as a journalist writing a fluff piece about successful entrepreneurs. The third had simply showed up at his gym and pretended their meeting was fate. They all wanted something: money, power, secrets, leverage. They came wrapped in designer clothes and expensive perfume, armed with doe eyes and practiced vulnerability, and every single one of them made his skin crawl. "Where to, boss?" Marcus, his head of security, asked as they reached the armored SUV. "Home." Cade slid into the back seat, already pulling out his phone to handle the fallout. There would be phone calls to make, alliances to reinforce, a message to send that made it clear what happened when people tested him. But as the city lights blurred past the tinted windows, he found himself feeling something he rarely acknowledged: tired. Bone-deep, soul-sick tired of the endless performance, of treating every interaction like a potential threat, of being surrounded by people who wanted him for everything except who he actually was. Not that he knew who that was anymore. The penthouse was dark when he arrived, just how he preferred it. 47th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city he'd helped build and break in equal measure. The space was minimalist, expensive, cold, like everything else in his life. Cade poured himself a real drink this time, stood at the window, and looked down at the streets below. Somewhere down there, people were living actual lives, falling in love for real, trusting each other, building something that wasn't founded on fear and leverage. He wondered what that felt like. His phone buzzed. A text from his accountant about a property acquisition, another from his lawyer about a contract dispute, a third from Marcus about security protocols. Nothing personal. Nothing ever was. Cade Voss was 34 years old, worth more than most small countries, feared by men who'd built their own empires on violence, and he couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him and seen a person instead of an opportunity. He finished his drink and went to bed. The alarm went off at 5:30, same as always. Workout, shower, breakfast prepared by a chef who arrived at 6 and left before he finished eating. By 7:15, he was in his office reviewing reports from his various enterprises. Some legal, some less so, all profitable. Meeting with the Vancouver crew at 9, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. The architects sent over revised plans for the waterfront development, and you have 3 RSVPs for the charity gala next month. Decline all 3, Cade said, not looking up from the financial projections on his screen. I'm not attending. Sir, you're the honorary chair, then they can honor my absence. He made a notation on a contract, his handwriting sharp and precise. Anything else? A pause. Your mother called again. Cade's pen stopped moving. And? She said it's been 4 months since you last visited. She'd like to see you. Tell her I'll send a car next week. She doesn't want a car, sir. She wants... Next item. His assistant knew better than to push. The delivery from Chen's office should arrive this afternoon. They're bringing the documents for the Shanghai partnership. Make sure someone verifies the courier's credentials before they reach this floor. Full background check. Of course. Cade went back to his work, pushing his mother's disappointment into the same locked compartment where he kept everything else that felt like weakness. She'd stopped trying to fix him years ago, stopped asking him to be softer, kinder, more like the boy he'd been before his father's world had swallowed him whole. Now she just called periodically, a gentle reminder that somewhere beneath the armor, her son still existed. He preferred not to think about it. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. The Vancouver crew wanted to expand into territory that belonged to a rival organization. Cade approved the move, but insisted on plausible deniability. The architects wanted to cut corners on the waterfront project. Cade threatened to pull funding unless they maintained his standards. A local politician called asking for a donation. Cade reminded him what happened to people who forgot favors already granted. By noon, he'd made 17 decisions that would affect hundreds of lives and millions of dollars. He'd eaten lunch without tasting it, signed documents without reading the fine print because he'd written most of it himself, and fielded 6 attempts to get him to agree to social engagements he had no intention of attending. Business as usual. At 2:30, his assistant buzzed again. Sir, the courier from Chen's office is here. Send them up. Cade didn't bother looking up when his office door opened. He was scanning the latest report from his operations in Seattle, making mental notes about which managers were exceeding expectations and which ones needed to be replaced. Set the package on the desk, he said absently. I need to see your ID first. Cade's head snapped up. The woman standing in his doorway wasn't what he expected. Mid-20s, dressed in a courier uniform that had seen better days, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and an expression that suggested she was already running behind schedule. She held a sealed envelope in one hand and absolutely no trace of intimidation in her eyes. Excuse me? Cade's voice dropped to the temperature that made grown men reconsider their life choices. Company policy. She didn't flinch. I need to verify the recipient's identity before I can release the package. ID, please. For a moment, Cade just stared at her. In the 15 years since he'd taken over his father's empire and built it into something even more formidable, no one had spoken to him like he was just another signature on a delivery form. Do you know who I am? Someone who needs to show me their ID if they want this envelope. She glanced at her watch, a cheap digital thing that probably cost $20. I've got 6 more stops today, so if we could move this along. Cade felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Not anger. He was too controlled for that. Something else. Something almost like amusement? I could have you fired with 1 phone call, he said, testing her. Cool. I'll find another job. She met his gaze without blinking. ID? He should have been furious. He should have called security, called Chen, called everyone involved in the vetting process that had somehow allowed this impertinent woman into his presence. Instead, he found himself reaching for his wallet. Here. She examined his driver's license with the same professional disinterest a DMV employee might show, compared the name to her delivery manifest, then nodded. Sign here, please. Cade scrawled his signature. She handed him the envelope, reclaimed her clipboard, and turned to leave. That's it? The words came out before he could stop them. She paused, looked back over her shoulder. Were you expecting something else? Most people... He trailed off, unsure how to explain that most people treated him like a dangerous animal that might bite. Most people are more careful around me. Most people don't have a boss who'll dock their pay if they're late. She shrugged. Have a good day, Mr. Voss. And then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that felt almost dismissive. Cade sat there for a long moment, the envelope forgotten in his hand, staring at the space where she'd stood. He couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him and seen nothing but an inconvenience to their schedule. Couldn't remember the last time someone had demanded something from him. Not wealth or favor, just basic courtesy and a signature. Sir? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Is everything all right? I saw the courier leave rather quickly. Fine. Cade finally opened the envelope, but his mind wasn't on the documents inside. It was on cheap digital watches and practical ponytails and eyes that held zero fear. He pulled up the building's security footage, found the clip from the elevator, watched her ride down, check her phone, exit into the parking garage. Nothing remarkable. Nothing special. Just a woman doing her job, already thinking about the next delivery. Cade closed the file, then opened it again, watched her walk out of frame. And for the first time in 6 months, maybe longer, he felt something other than the cold, calculated control that had become his default setting. Curiosity. The next delivery came 3 days later. Cade had arranged it, of course. A simple matter of requesting hard copies of documents that could have easily been emailed, specifying a particular courier service, timing it for the afternoon when he knew she'd be on shift. Marcus had given him a strange look when he'd made the request, but knew better than to ask questions. 2:15, right on schedule. Sir, the courier from Chen's office, send them up. This time, Cade was ready. He'd positioned himself at his desk, reviewing contracts with the kind of casual authority that came from owning the building they were in. When the door opened, he didn't look up immediately. ID, please? There it was. That same no-nonsense tone, like he was just another item on her checklist. Cade glanced up, allowed the briefest hint of recognition to cross his face. You again? Me again? She didn't smile. ID? He handed it over, watched her go through the same verification process. Up close, he noticed details he'd missed before. A small scar above her left eyebrow, the calluses on her hands that suggested physical work beyond package delivery, the way she held herself with a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with arrogance. Sign here. Cade took the pen she offered, a cheap ballpoint, not one of the $1,000 fountain pens scattered across his desk. You always this pleasant with clients? You always this chatty with delivery drivers? She pulled the clipboard back before he'd even finished signing. I don't usually see the same one twice. Yeah, well, Chen's office apparently likes your building. She checked her watch again, that same cheap digital one. We done? What's your name? For the first time, he saw her hesitate. Not fear, something more like caution. Why? Professional courtesy. You know mine. She studied him for a moment, and Cade had the distinct impression of being assessed and found only marginally interesting. Nyla. Nyla. He tested the name, found it suited her. Simple, direct, no pretense. How long have you been doing courier work? Long enough to know when someone's stalling. But there was the faintest hint of amusement in her voice now. Look, Mr. Voss, I'm sure you're used to people hanging on your every word, but I've got 4 more deliveries and traffic's already a nightmare. So unless you need something else... Dinner. The word hung in the air between them. Nyla's expression shifted from professional impatience to something closer to disbelief. Are you serious right now? I'm always serious. Yeah, I can tell. She shook her head, already moving toward the door. I'm going to pass. Why? She turned back, and for a moment, Cade saw something flash across her face. Not fear, but knowledge. The kind of recognition that came from paying attention to the world around you. Because I know exactly who you are, Mr. Voss, and I make it a policy not to have dinner with people who could make me disappear if I accidentally use the wrong fork. I don't make people disappear over dinner etiquette. But you do make people disappear. It wasn't a question. She met his eyes with a directness that should have felt like a challenge, but somehow didn't. Look, I'm sure you're charming or whatever, but I've got a life that doesn't include playing dress-up for men who think everything comes with a price tag. No offense. None taken. Cade leaned back in his chair, genuinely intrigued now. What if I said there's no price tag? Then I'd say you're lying. Nyla opened the door. Have a good day, Mr. Voss. Try not to make anyone disappear before my next delivery. And once again, she was gone. Cade sat in the silence of his office, a smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. An actual smile. When was the last time that had happened? Marcus appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later, his expression concerned. Boss, I ran the background check like you asked. Nyla Carter, 26, works for Quick Serve Courier, lives in a studio apartment in the East District, no criminal record, no connection to any known organizations. She's... He paused, reading something on his tablet. She's nobody. Nobody, Cade repeated. Clean as they come. Works 2 jobs, saving for something, looks like business permits and small business loans. She's trying to open a bakery. A bakery? Of course she was. Anything else? Marcus shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Boss, I don't mean to overstep, but why the interest? She's not a threat, not an asset, not trying to use me, Cade finished. Exactly. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face, followed quickly by concern. Boss, that's all, Marcus. Alone again, Cade pulled up Nyla's delivery schedule, watched the GPS tracking show her moving from location to location across the city, watched her efficient routes, her precisely timed stops, the way she navigated traffic with the expertise of someone who'd been doing this for years. She was nobody, and that made her the most interesting person he'd met in a decade. The next 2 deliveries followed the same pattern. Cade arranged them. Nyla showed up with her clipboard and impatience, refused his invitations with increasing creativity. I don't date clients. I'm not asking you to date me. I'm asking you to have a conversation over food. Pass. Why? Because conversations over food with men like you tend to end with expectations I'm not interested in meeting. What kind of expectations? The kind where I wake up the next morning and my entire life has been rearranged without my permission. She wasn't wrong. By the 5th delivery, Cade had stopped pretending he needed documents from Chen's office. He just scheduled the courier pickup, waited for Nyla to appear, and engaged in what had become a perversely enjoyable ritual of rejection. Coffee, he said this time. 20 minutes. There's a shop 2 blocks from here. I'm working. Your shift ends in 45 minutes. Nyla's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? I pay attention. That's creepy. That's honest. Cade stood, came around the desk. Not threatening, not crowding her, just close enough to make his point. 20 minutes. You pick the place. You pay for yourself. I'll answer 3 questions, then I'll leave you alone. 3 questions? Anything you want to know. After that, if you tell me to disappear, I will. She studied him with those sharp, assessing eyes. Anything? Within reason. And if I say no to the coffee? Then I'll keep arranging deliveries until your boss gets suspicious about why Chen's office suddenly needs so many documents hand-delivered. That's borderline stalking, you know. I'm aware. He didn't apologize. 20 minutes, Nyla. What's the worst that could happen? She laughed. Actually laughed. And the sound hit him somewhere in the chest he'd thought was purely decorative. The worst? You mean besides getting kidnapped, ransomed, or used as a pawn in whatever game you're playing this week? I don't play games. Everyone plays games. But she was considering it. He could see the calculation in her eyes, weighing risk against curiosity. 1 condition. Name it. Public place. Lots of witnesses, and I bring pepper spray. Fair enough? Fine. Rosie's Diner on 5th, 30 minutes. If you're late, I'm gone. Cade checked his watch. I'll be there in 25. Show off, Nyla muttered, but there was that hint of amusement again. This time when she left, Cade didn't pull up the security footage. He just grabbed his jacket and told Marcus to have the car ready. For the first time in years, Cade Voss was going somewhere that wasn't a meeting, wasn't a power play, wasn't calculated to advance any agenda except the simple, strange desire to talk to someone who didn't want anything from him. It felt dangerous. It felt reckless. It felt, against all odds and better judgment, like the first real thing he'd done in a very long time. Rosie's Diner was the kind of place Cade hadn't set foot in since before his father died. Cracked vinyl booths, fluorescent lighting that buzzed like dying insects, laminated menus sticky with decades of use. The coffee was terrible and the pie was worse, But it was open 24 hours and nobody gave a damn who you were as long as you paid your bill. Nyla was already there when he arrived, sitting in a corner booth with clear sight lines to both exits. Smart. She'd changed out of her courier uniform into jeans and a faded sweatshirt, her hair still pulled back in that practical ponytail. No makeup, no pretense, no performance. She looked exhausted. "You're early," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. "So are you." "Yeah, well, I wanted to make sure you didn't buy the place out from under me before I got here." She flagged down a waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the Nixon administration. "Coffee, black. And keep it coming." "Same," Cade said. The waitress shuffled off without acknowledging either of them, which felt oddly refreshing. Cade couldn't remember the last time someone had taken his order without treating it like a papal decree. "So?" Nyla leaned back, arms crossed. "3 questions. Then you disappear forever. Those were the terms." "Those were the terms." "Okay." She considered him for a moment, and Cade had the unsettling sensation of being truly seen, not assessed for usefulness or threat level, just observed. Question 1. Why me? "You're the first person in 6 years who's looked at me and not wanted something." "Everyone wants something." "Fair point. You're the first person who wanted something I could give without it costing me anything that matters." He paused as the waitress returned with 2 mugs of coffee that could probably strip paint. "You wanted my ID, my signature. Basic human courtesy. Nothing else." Nyla took a sip of coffee, made a face, added 3 sugars from the dispenser on the table. "That's a pretty low bar." "You'd be surprised how few people clear it." "No, I wouldn't." She stirred her coffee with a bent spoon. "I know what you are, Cade. I've lived in this city my whole life. I've seen what happens to people who cross you, people who work for you, people who get too close to you. So let me be real clear about something. I'm not interested in being another cautionary tale." "Then why are you here?" "Because you promised to answer 3 questions and then leave me alone. And because—" She trailed off, seemed to wrestle with something. "Because I'm curious why someone like you is wasting time on someone like me. There's got to be an angle. There's always an angle." "No angle." "Bullshit." Cade almost smiled. "You think I'm lying?" "I think you're so used to playing chess with people that you don't know how to do anything else." Nyla set her mug down with more force than necessary. "So what's the play here? You trying to prove something to yourself, slumming it with the normal people? Or is this some weird power trip where you get off on making working-class women uncomfortable?" "None of the above." "Then what?" "Question 2, Cade countered. Nyla's eyes narrowed, but she let it slide. "Fine. Question 2. What do you actually want from me?" "Honestly, I don't know yet." He took a drink of the terrible coffee, let the bitterness ground him. "I've spent 15 years building an empire where every interaction is a transaction, where trust is a liability and vulnerability is a death sentence. And then you walked into my office, demanded my ID like I was just another signature on your route, and treated me like I was wasting your time." "You were wasting my time." "Exactly. And it was the most honest interaction I've had in a decade." Cade set his mug down, met her eyes. "So to answer your question, I want to know what it's like to talk to someone who doesn't see me as an opportunity or a threat. Just for an hour. That's it." "That's it," Nyla repeated, clearly skeptical. "That's it. And after the hour?" "After the hour, you never see me again unless Chen's office has an actual delivery." He meant it too. Or at least, he wanted to mean it. 1 hour, Nyla. Then I'm gone." She studied him in silence, her fingers wrapped around the chipped mug, her expression unreadable. The diner clattered and hummed around them, dishes clanking, conversations bleeding together, someone's phone playing music too loud from a back booth. Normal life, Cade thought. This was what normal life sounded like. "Question 3, Nyla finally said. "And I want the truth, not some rehearsed PR answer. Are you dangerous?" "Yes." She blinked. "Just like that? No explanation? You asked for truth." Cade didn't look away. "I'm very dangerous. I've hurt people. I've destroyed people. I've made decisions that ended lives and ruined families, and I did it without losing sleep because that's what my world requires. So yes, Nyla, I'm dangerous, but not to you." "How can you promise that?" "I can't." Not in any way that would satisfy you. He pushed his coffee aside, leaned forward slightly. But I can tell you that in 15 years of doing terrible things, I've never once hurt someone who wasn't playing the same game I was. I've never touched anyone innocent, and I've never, ever broken my word when I've given it to someone who didn't deserve to be lied to. And you think I don't deserve to be lied to? I think you're the first person in a long time who's earned the truth. Nyla laughed, sharp, bitter, nothing like the surprise sound she'd made in his office. You know what's really messed up? I actually believe you, which probably makes me the stupid one here. Or the brave one. Same thing in my experience. She checked her watch, that same cheap digital one, and sighed. Your hour starts now. Talk. So Cade talked. Not about the empire or the violence or the things he'd done that kept him awake on the rare nights when his conscience made an appearance. He talked about smaller things, human things. About his mother who called every week and got disappointed every time he answered. About the architecture books he collected but never had time to read. About how he'd wanted to be a city planner when he was young, before his father had pulled him into the family business and shown him that dreams were luxuries he couldn't afford. Nyla listened without interrupting, her coffee growing cold in front of her, her expression shifting from skepticism to something that might have been sympathy. City planner, she said when he paused. That's specific. I like the idea of building something that lasted, something that made people's lives better instead of worse. Cade shrugged, the gesture feeling awkward after years of rigid control. Turns out I got my wish. I've built half this city, just not the way I imagined. The waterfront development, that's yours, right? You've been paying attention? I drive past it every day. Neela shifted in her seat, tucked one leg under her. It's going to be beautiful. Sustainable design, mixed-use spaces, affordable housing units, almost like someone actually gives a damn about the people who live here. Don't give me too much credit. The affordable housing is a tax break. But you still included it. You didn't have to. Cade didn't have a response to that. They sat in silence for a moment, the diner noise filling the space between them. Your turn, he said finally. Tell me about the bakery. Nyla's guard went up immediately. How do you know about that? I pay attention, remember? Right, creepy. But there was less edge in her voice now. She picked up her spoon, turned it over in her hands. It's not a big deal. Just something I've been saving for. A little storefront, nothing fancy. Somewhere I can make actual food instead of delivering other people's documents. Why a bakery? Why not a bakery? She set the spoon down. I like baking. I'm good at it. And there's something satisfying about making something people actually need. Bread, pastries, cakes for birthdays and anniversaries. Real things that matter in small, normal ways. Small and normal, Cade repeated. You say that like it's a bad thing. I say it like someone who knows you probably spend more on a single suit than I'll save in 2 years. Neela's voice wasn't bitter, just factual. We're from different worlds, Cade. You build empires. I'm trying to scrape together enough for a lease deposit. And yet here we are. Yeah, here we are. She glanced at her watch again. Your hour's almost up. It had gone faster than he'd expected, faster than he'd wanted. One more question, Cade said. Not part of the original 3. You can tell me to go to hell if you want. I'll probably tell you that anyway. Ask. Can I see you again? Neela's expression went carefully neutral. I thought the deal was 1 hour, then you disappear. The deal was 1 hour, then I leave you alone if you want me to. Do you want me to? Honestly? She pulled her jacket on, started gathering her things. I don't know. Part of me thinks getting involved with you in any capacity is the worst decision I could possibly make. The smart play is to walk out of here, quit my courier job, and hope you get bored and forget I exist. And the other part? Nyla stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. The other part thinks you're probably the saddest person I've ever met. And I'm an idiot who has a habit of trying to fix things that aren't my responsibility to fix. She pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, left it on the table. But I'm not your charity case, and I'm definitely not your redemption arc. If you want to see me again, it's on my terms. Got it? Got it. Good. She headed for the door, then paused, looked back. There's a street fair in the East District on Saturday. Food trucks, local vendors, that kind of thing. I'll be at the Thai place around 7. If you show up in a suit or with security, I'm walking away. What should I wear? Something that doesn't cost more than my rent. She pushed through the door, letting in a blast of evening air. And Cade, If this is some kind of game, if you're playing me for reasons I can't see yet, just tell me now. Save us both the trouble. It's not a game. We'll see. Then she was gone, disappearing into the sidewalk traffic, just another person going about their life. Cade sat there for another minute, staring at the $5 bill she'd left, the half-empty mug of terrible coffee, the bent spoon she'd used to stir in enough sugar to make it drinkable. His phone buzzed. Marcus, asking if he needed pickup. Cade texted back, "I'll walk." He left a $100 bill on the table, enough to cover both coffees and a tip that would probably make the waitress's entire week, and stepped out into the cooling evening. The city was alive around him, people streaming past without a second glance, nobody knowing who he was, nobody caring. For the first time in 15 years, Cade Voss walked home without security, without purpose, without agenda. He just walked and thought about street fairs and cheap watches and women who paid for their own coffee, even when sitting across from a man who could buy the building they were in. Saturday came slower than Cade expected. He handled business, attended meetings, made decisions that moved millions of dollars and dozens of lives. But in the quiet moments, waiting for an elevator, reviewing a contract, staring out his window at 3 in the morning, his mind kept drifting to the East District and food trucks and 7 o'clock. "You seem distracted, boss," Marcus said on Friday afternoon. "I'm fine. With respect, you've been staring at that same page for 10 minutes. Cade looked down at the contract in front of him, realized he hadn't absorbed a single word. "I'm reconsidering the terms on the Seattle acquisition." "The Seattle acquisition was finalized 2 weeks ago." "Then I'm reconsidering my reconsideration." Cade closed the folder, stood. "I'm leaving early today." Marcus's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "Sir, you have the meeting with the—" "Cancel it. Reschedule for Monday." "But, Marcus, I'm taking the afternoon off. If that's a problem, you can file a complaint with Human Resources." "Oh, wait. I am Human Resources." "Complaint denied. Have a good weekend." He left his head of security standing there with his mouth open, which would have been amusing if Cade's heart wasn't doing something weird and irregular in his chest. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of uncharacteristic anxiety. Cade went through his closet 3 times, trying to find something that didn't scream wealth or power. Everything was tailored, expensive, designed to send a message. Finally, he dug into the back corner and found a pair of dark jeans he'd bought years ago for some undercover work that never materialized, paired them with a plain black t-shirt that only looked expensive if you knew fabric. He looked wrong, like a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes, except in reverse. Saturday evening found him standing outside the East District Street Fair at 6:45, feeling more nervous than he'd been walking into hostile negotiations with men who'd happily put a bullet in his skull. This was ridiculous. He was Cade Voss. He didn't get nervous over food trucks and casual encounters. He built empires. He broke competitors. You actually came. Cade turned. Nyla stood a few feet away, wearing jeans and a light jacket, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. She looked younger this way, softer, but her eyes still held that sharp awareness. "You sound surprised," he said. "I'm 90% surprised, 10% impressed. You found something to wear that doesn't have a designer label." She came closer, openly assessing him. "Still look like you're uncomfortable in your own skin, though." "I don't do casual well." "No kidding." But she was almost smiling. "Come on, the Thai place has a line and I'm starving." They walked into the fair together, and Cade felt the world shift around him. Strings of lights overhead, music from a dozen different sources bleeding together into something chaotic and alive. Families with strollers, teenagers in packs, elderly couples walking hand in hand. People eating and laughing and living lives that had nothing to do with power or control. It was overwhelming. "You okay?" Nyla glanced at him, concerned. "You look like you're about to pass out." "I'm fine, just there's a lot of people." "Yeah, that's kind of the point of a street fair." She grabbed his arm, steered him toward a food truck with a long line. "Try not to look so much like a hitman at a birthday party. You're making people nervous." "I don't know how to not look like this." "Relax your shoulders, stop scanning for exits. Maybe smile if you're feeling really adventurous." Nyla released his arm, joined the line. "And for the love of everything, do not pull out a black card when we get to the front. I've got cash." "I can pay." "I know you can pay." You could probably buy the entire fare without checking your account balance. But if you do, this whole thing becomes something it's not supposed to be. She looked at him seriously. This is just two people getting dinner, normal people. People who wait in lines and pay in crumpled bills and don't have security teams hovering nearby. Can you do that? Cade thought about the SUV parked 3 blocks away with Marcus inside, monitoring his location on GPS. Thought about the phone in his pocket with 17 unread messages, all of them solvable with money or threats. Thought about the entire infrastructure of power and control he'd built his life around. I can try, he said. Good enough. They waited in line like normal people. When they reached the front, Nyla ordered pad thai and spring rolls. Cade got the same because he didn't actually know what he wanted. She paid with exact change from her jacket pocket, and they carried their food to a picnic table that wobbled when Cade set his weight on it. This is weird, he said. What is? This. All of it. He gestured at the fare around them, the plastic fork in his hand, the styrofoam container of noodles. I don't remember the last time I ate something that didn't come on real plates. Well, buckle up, because plastic utensils are about to blow your mind. Nyla took a bite of her pad thai, made a satisfied sound. Okay, this is actually good. Try it before it gets cold. Cade tried it. It was good. Better than good, actually. The kind of food that tasted like someone had actually given a damn while making it. You're making a face, Nyla said. What's wrong with it? Nothing. It's just different. Different good or different bad? Different honest. He took another bite, trying to find the right words. Everything I eat is calculated. Michelin star restaurants for business dinners. Catered events where the food is art. Private chefs who know exactly what I like. This tastes like someone made it because they wanted it to be delicious, not impressive. You're overthinking noodles. I overthink everything. Yeah, I'm getting that. Nyla ate in silence for a moment, watching the fare flow around them. A child ran past chasing a balloon, shrieking with laughter. Can I ask you something? After 3 questions at the diner, I think we're past asking permission. Fair, so what's it like? Being you, having all that power. Cade considered his answer carefully. Lonely. Exhausting. Necessary. Necessary. The world I inherited didn't come with an instruction manual. It came with enemies and expectations, and a legacy I didn't ask for but couldn't refuse. He set his fork down, the appetite fading. My father built an empire on fear and violence. When he died, I had 2 choices. Let it fall apart and watch good people get hurt in the chaos, or take control and make it into something I could live with. And you chose control. I chose survival. For me, for the people who depended on the structure he'd built, for the city that would have torn itself apart in a power vacuum. Cade met her eyes. I'm not a good man, Nyla, but I'm a better man than my father was. That has to count for something. Does it? She asked quietly. Count for something, I mean? I don't know. You tell me. Nyla pushed her container aside, leaned back against the picnic table. I think you're trying. I think you're so deep in your own world that you can't see what normal looks like anymore, and I think that scares you more than any enemy you've ever faced. But yeah, I think trying counts for something. Even if I fail? Especially if you fail. Trying and failing means you're still human. It's the people who stop trying that turn into monsters. They sat there as the fare moved around them, the sky darkening overhead, lights coming on in strings and clusters. Somewhere nearby, a band started playing. Street musicians with more enthusiasm than skill, but the crowd didn't seem to mind. Want to walk? Nyla asked after a while. Yeah. They threw away their containers and wandered through the fair without destination. Nyla pointed out booths, jewelry made from recycled glass, paintings by local artists, a guy selling handmade furniture that actually looked decent. Cade found himself relaxing incrementally, his shoulders dropping, his constant surveillance of surroundings fading into something closer to observation. You're getting better at this, Nyla said. At what? Being a person instead of a chess piece. She stopped at a booth selling baked goods, studied the offerings with professional interest. These are terrible. The croissants are overbaked and the bread has no structure. I could do so much better. I believe you. You haven't even tasted my stuff. Don't need to. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about baking. Same way I sound when I talk about architecture. Cade picked up a cookie, examined it. How much do you still need? For the bakery? Nyla's expression shuddered immediately. Nope, we're not doing this. Doing what? The thing where you swoop in with your checkbook and solve all my problems because you think money fixes everything. She grabbed his wrist, pulled his hand down. I don't want your money, Cade. I want to earn this myself. I need to earn it myself. Why? Because if I let you buy me a bakery, then it's not mine anymore. It's yours. And I become just another thing you own, another investment in your portfolio. Her grip tightened. I've worked 2 jobs for 3 years to save up. I've lived in a studio apartment with pipes that freeze in winter. I've skipped meals and worn the same 5 outfits and said no to everything that costs money because I was building towards something that was mine. You don't get to take that away from me just because you want to feel useful. Cade looked down at her hand on his wrist, the calloused fingers, the chipped nail polish she probably hadn't had time to fix. I wasn't trying to take anything away. Maybe not. But that's what would happen. She released him, stepped back. Look, I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I do. But I'm not your redemption project. I'm not the pure, struggling worker you get to rescue so you can feel better about the empire you built on other people's suffering. I'm just a person trying to make a life. And I need to do that on my own terms. Understood. And he did understand, even if part of him wanted to argue that accepting help wasn't weakness. But he'd learned something in the past hour. Nyla's pride wasn't about ego. It was about identity, about proving to herself that she could build something real in a world that kept trying to tell her she was too small to matter. He respected that more than she probably knew. They walked in silence for a while, the tension slowly dissipating. The band finished their set, started packing up. The fare was thinning out as families with young children headed home. I should go, Nyla said eventually. Early shift tomorrow. I'll walk you to your car. I took the bus. Then I'll walk you to the bus stop. She gave him a look. You're not going to have Marcus tail me home, are you? How do you know about Marcus? Please. You think I didn't notice the SUV 3 blocks away? Or the way you keep checking your phone like someone might be sending you urgent life or death messages? Nyla shook her head, but she was almost smiling. You're not as subtle as you think you are. Clearly. Cade pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. There. I told him to stand down for the night. Just like that? Just like that. They walked toward the bus stop, the fare fading behind them. The streets were quieter here, residential neighborhoods where people sat on porches and kids played under streetlights. This was nice, Nyla said when they reached the stop. Weird, but nice. Can we do it again? Maybe. She studied him in the harsh fluorescent glow of the bus shelter. But I need you to understand something, Cade. I can't be the person who saves you from yourself. I can't be the light in your darkness or whatever romanticized bullshit you might be building up in your head. I'm just a tired woman who works too much and dreams about ovens and proper ventilation systems. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who's drowning and thinks I'm a life raft, and that's not fair to either of us. Cade wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, wanted to explain that what he felt when he was around her wasn't desperation but something simpler, the basic human desire to be seen as something other than a weapon or a wallet. But maybe she was right. Maybe he was drowning and didn't even know it anymore. I'll be more careful, he said finally. With expectations, with assumptions, with all of it. Good. Her bus appeared at the end of the block, its headlights cutting through the evening. There's a late-night diner near my place. Lou's on 7th and Market. Sometimes I go there after my second shift, grab a piece of pie before heading home. If you happen to be in the neighborhood, when? That's the thing. You don't get to schedule it. You don't get to plan it. If we're both there at the same time, we're both there. If not, then not. The bus pulled up, its brakes hissing. No guarantees, Cade. No control. Just chance. I'm not good with chance. I know. That's why I'm suggesting it. Nyla climbed onto the bus, turned back at the top of the steps. And Cade? Thanks for trying. The doors closed and the bus pulled away, taking her with it. Cade stood there for a long moment, phone in his pocket, security team dismissed, no agenda and no plan. Just a man standing at a bus stop in a neighborhood he'd probably never visited, thinking about pie and chance and the terrifying prospect of not being in control. His phone buzzed. Marcus, asking if he needed pickup. Cade looked at the message, looked at the street around him, looked at the direction the bus had gone. Then he started walking, not toward home, not toward the office, just walking through neighborhoods he'd never bothered to notice, past lives he'd never considered, through a city he'd helped build but never really lived in. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Cade Voss felt something other than the weight of empire pressing down on his shoulders. He felt possibility. Lou's Diner became Cade's new obsession, though he'd never admit it out loud. He started showing up at random times, 11 at night after particularly brutal meetings, 1 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come, 3:30 on a Tuesday because he'd been driving past and saw the lights on. Sometimes Nyla was there, hunched over a booth with a slice of apple pie and a notebook full of bakery plans. Sometimes she wasn't. The nights she wasn't there felt longer than they should. "You're doing it wrong," Marcus said after the 5th unscheduled detour to 7th and Market. "Doing what wrong?" "Whatever this is," Marcus gestured vaguely at Cade, at the city outside the car window, at the general situation. "Boss, with all due respect, you're circling this woman like a shark. It's getting obvious." "I'm being careful. You're being obsessed. There's a difference." Marcus pulled into a parking spot 2 blocks from Lou's. "And before you tell me to mind my business, your business is my business. That's literally my job description." Cade didn't get out of the car immediately, just sat there, staring at the diner's neon sign flickering in the darkness. She said no guarantees, no control, just chance. "And you're manufacturing chance by showing up 6 times a week?" 4 times. 6. I've been keeping track. Marcus turned in his seat. "Look, I get it. She's different. She doesn't want anything from you, which makes her the rarest commodity in your world. But you need to be straight with yourself about what you're doing here. Are you genuinely interested in this woman, or are you just fascinated by something you can't control?" It was a fair question, one Cade had been avoiding asking himself. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe both." "Then figure it out before you hurt her. Because whatever else she is, she's not equipped to handle the fallout of being connected to you." Marcus's voice was softer now, almost gentle. "Your world doesn't do casual, boss. You know that. The second people realize you care about her, she becomes a target, and she didn't sign up for that." Cade sat with that truth for a long moment. Then he got out of the car and walked to the diner anyway. Nyla was there, because apparently fate had a sense of humor. She looked up when the bell over the door chimed, registered his presence with a slight nod, then went back to her notebook. No surprise, no performance, just acknowledgement. Cade slid into the booth across from her without asking permission. "Stalking is illegal, you know," she said without looking up. "I was in the neighborhood, at midnight, on a Thursday." Nyla made a note in her margin, something about bulk flower suppliers, then finally met his eyes. "You look terrible." "Thanks." "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "That's not an answer." She pushed her pie across the table. "Eat. You look like you're about to pass out." Cade stared at the half-eaten slice of apple pie. "I don't need—" It wasn't a suggestion. "Eat." He picked up her fork, took a bite. The pie was mediocre. Too sweet, crust a little soggy, but it had been offered freely, which made it taste better than anything he'd eaten in weeks. "So what is it this time?" Neela asked. "Bad meeting? Violent takeover? Someone trying to kill you?" "All 3, actually." "Busy day." "You have no idea." Cade took another bite, felt some of the tension in his shoulders ease. "There's a power struggle in the Northern Territories. One of my associates thinks he's ready to run things himself. He's wrong, but he's loud about it." "And you're going to what? Kill him?" "Probably not. Death creates martyrs. Better to discredit him, strip his support structure, let him collapse under his own weight." Cade set the fork down. "But it's exhausting. The constant chess game, the endless positioning. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just be normal." "Yeah." Nyla closed her notebook, gave him her full attention. "You know you can't actually have both, right? You can't be a ruthless crime boss and also live a normal life. Those things are fundamentally incompatible." "I know." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to build some kind of hybrid existence where you keep all your power, but also get to pretend you're just a regular guy who shows up at diners at midnight." She leaned back, arms crossed. "That's not how it works, Cade. You don't get to have your empire and your innocence." I'm not looking for innocence. Then what are you looking for? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them wanted to examine too closely. Something real, Cade said finally. Something that isn't built on fear or leverage or transaction, just real. And you think you can find that with me? I think you're the first person in 15 years who's made me want to try. Nyla was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the laminate table. The diner hummed around them. A drunk arguing with the jukebox, a couple having a whispered fight in the corner booth, the night cook cursing at something in the kitchen. I'm scared of you, she said quietly. Cade's chest tightened. I told you I would never... Not like that. I'm not scared you'll hurt me physically. I'm scared that I'm starting to care about you, and caring about you is probably the stupidest thing I could do. She looked up, and her eyes were raw with honesty. You're a good person trapped in a terrible life. Or maybe you're a terrible person trying to be good. I honestly can't tell. But either way, getting close to you feels like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's ground below. So don't. Don't what? Don't get close. Don't care. Keep your distance and stay safe. Cade meant it, even though the words felt like swallowing glass. Marcus is right. My world doesn't do casual. Anyone who gets close to me becomes a liability, a target, and you deserve better than that. You're really bad at this, you know that? Nyla said, but there was something almost fond in her voice. The noble sacrifice thing, the pushing away for her own good routine. It's very dramatic, very film noir, and very stupid. How is it stupid to want you safe? Because you're making my decisions for me. She reached across the table, grabbed his hand before he could pull away. I'm a grown woman, Cade. I know the risks. I've known them since the first time you walked into that diner and I realized who you were. And I'm still here. Not because I'm naive, not because I think I can fix you, but because for some absolutely incomprehensible reason, I like you. Cade stared at their joined hands. Hers were warm, slightly rough from work. His were cold, scarred in places from fights he'd rather forget. They didn't match, didn't fit, didn't make any kind of sense together. This is a mistake, he said. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. Nyla squeezed his hand once, then released it. Look, I'm not asking for forever. I'm not even asking for tomorrow. I'm just asking for this. Occasional pie at midnight, random conversations, maybe the truth once in a while. Can you do that? I don't know how to do this. How to be... this. Yeah, I noticed. You're terrible at it. But she was smiling now, tired and real. Lucky for you, I'm patient. And stubborn. And apparently attracted to emotionally unavailable crime lords with nice cheekbones. My cheekbones? Focus on the important parts, Cade. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Cade laughed. Actually laughed. Not the polite sound he made at business dinners, but something genuine and surprised. Nyla's smile widened. There it is. Proof you're still human under all that ice. Barely. Barely counts. They sat there as the clock ticked past midnight, past 1, past 2. The diner emptied out around them until they were the only customers left, just two people talking about nothing and everything. Nyla told him about the elderly woman on her delivery route who always had cookies waiting. Cade told her about the architect he'd hired who kept trying to sneak gargoyles into every building design. Small things, human things, the kind of conversation that didn't require performance or strategy. It felt dangerous in ways that violence never had. I should go, Nyla finally said around 3. Shift starts at 6. I'll give you a ride. Absolutely not. Your car probably costs more than my apartment building. So? So I take the bus like a normal person. But she didn't move to leave yet. When will I see you again? When chance allows. Isn't that the rule? I'm starting to hate that rule. Nyla gathered her things, hesitated. Hey, Cade. Yeah? Thank you. For trying. For being honest. For being here even though it probably goes against every instinct you have. Those instincts have kept me alive for 15 years. Maybe. But they've also kept you alone. She stood, shouldered her bag. Sometimes survival isn't the same as living. She left before he could respond, the bell chiming her departure. Cade sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at the empty pie plate, the cheap coffee, the notebook she'd forgotten on the seat. He picked it up carefully, flipped through pages of calculations and sketches and dreams written in cramped handwriting, flour ratios and oven temperatures and lease comparisons. A life planned out in minute detail, built on savings scraped together dollar by dollar. She'd left it behind. Accidentally or on purpose, he wasn't sure. Cade tucked the notebook into his jacket and left cash on the table, enough to cover their coffee and a generous tip. Outside, the city was quiet in that strange way of very late nights, when even the constant hum of traffic faded to something almost peaceful. His phone buzzed. Marcus, asking if he needed pickup. Cade started to type a response, then stopped. Looked at the empty street, the distant glow of the city center, the direction Nyla had gone. He pocketed his phone and started walking. 3 weeks passed in a strange, new rhythm. Cade still ran his empire with ruthless efficiency. The Northern Territory situation resolved itself when his rival's accountant mysteriously produced evidence of embezzlement. The waterfront development stayed on schedule. The Seattle acquisition expanded ahead of projections. Business as usual, controlled and precise. But the edges of his world had started to blur. He showed up at Lou's with increasing frequency, and Nyla was there more often than chance should allow. They talked about everything except what they were becoming to each other. She showed him her bakery plans, and he offered suggestions about building codes and contractor negotiations without trying to take over. He told her about his mother, about the weekly phone calls he still dreaded, and Nyla listened without judgment. "You should visit her," she said one night over terrible coffee. "I send a car every week." "That's not the same as visiting. It's safer for both of us." "Safer how? She's your mom, not a business liability." Nyla stirred sugar into her coffee, the spoon clinking against cheap ceramic. "When's the last time you actually sat down with her? Had a real conversation?" Cade didn't answer because he couldn't remember. "That's what I thought." Nyla set her spoon down with more force than necessary. "You know what your problem is? You've spent so long protecting yourself from getting hurt that you've stopped letting anyone actually reach you, including the people who loved you before you became whatever this is. This keeps them safe. This keeps you isolated. There's a difference. In my world, isolation is survival, and in mine, it's just sad." She looked at him with those sharp, honest eyes. "Your mother didn't choose your world, Cade. She didn't choose violence or power or any of this. She just chose to love her son. The least you can do is show up once in a while and let her see that he still exists under all the armor." The words hit harder than they should have. Harder than anything his enemies had thrown at him in years. "Fine," Cade said. "I'll visit her this weekend." "Good. Only if you come with me." Nyla blinked. "What?" "You heard me. If I'm doing this, you're coming." He wasn't sure why he'd said it, only that the thought of facing his mother's disappointment alone felt impossible. "Those are my terms." "That's insane. I can't just—" "Why not? You said I needed to visit her. Fine, but I'm not doing it alone." "Cade, she's going to think I finally brought someone home who isn't there to rob me or kill me or extract information. She'll be thrilled." It was probably true. His mother had been dropping increasingly unsubtle hints about grandchildren for the last 5 years. Nyla opened her mouth to argue, closed it, tried again. "This is a terrible idea." "Most of my ideas are terrible. This one at least has good intentions behind it." "Your mom is going to take one look at me and start planning a wedding." "Probably." "And you're okay with that?" Cade considered the question seriously. Was he okay with his mother getting the wrong idea? With implying there was something between them that they hadn't defined or discussed? With bringing Nyla deeper into his world, even the softer parts of it? "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." Neela stared at him for a long moment, something complicated working across her face. "You're going to make this difficult, aren't you?" "I don't know how to make it easy. No kidding." But she was smiling slightly, that tired, real smile he'd started to crave. "Fine. Saturday. But I'm bringing pie, and if she asks about our relationship status, you're handling it." "Deal." Saturday came with unexpected nerves. Cade found himself changing clothes 3 times before settling on casual slacks and a button-down that split the difference between his usual armor and normal human being. Nyla met him outside her apartment building, wearing a sundress that made her look younger, softer, carrying a homemade strawberry rhubarb pie that smelled incredible. "You made that?" Kate asked, staring at the perfectly latticed crust. Told you I was good. She climbed into his car, the sedan, not the SUV, because she'd threatened to bail if he showed up in anything too ostentatious, and balanced the pie carefully on her lap. Your mom have any allergies I should know about? No, she's gonna love you. You don't know that. I know my mother. She's been waiting 15 years for me to bring home someone who isn't using me for access or information. You're going to be her new favorite person. Great. No pressure. The drive to his mother's house took 40 minutes, cutting through neighborhoods that went from urban to suburban to something almost peaceful. His mother had moved out here after his father died, wanting distance from the empire he'd built, from the violence that had consumed her husband and threatened to consume her son. She'd never said it directly, but Cade knew she blamed him for choosing to continue what his father started instead of walking away. You're tense, Nyla observed as he pulled into the driveway. I'm fine. You're gripping the steering wheel like it might escape. That's not fine. She set the pie on the dashboard, turned to face him. Hey, look at me. Cade did. She's your mom. She loves you. This is going to be fine. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway, because the alternative is assuming the worst, and I'm trying to break that habit. Neela grabbed the pie, opened her door. Come on, let's go meet your mom before you talk yourself out of this. His mother opened the door before they reached the porch, and the expression on her face was worth every uncomfortable mile of the drive. Surprise, joy, cautious hope, all fighting for dominance. Cade, her voice cracked slightly. You came. I said I would. You say a lot of things. But she was already pulling him into a hug, her arms surprisingly strong for someone barely 5 feet tall. And you brought a friend. Mom, this is Nyla. Nyla, my mother, Elizabeth. It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Voss. Nyla offered the pie like a peace offering. I brought dessert. Elizabeth took the pie, studied it with the eye of someone who'd spent decades baking for church functions and family dinners. You made this? Yes, ma'am. The lattice work is beautiful, and is that strawberry rhubarb with a hint of orange zest. Oh, honey, you didn't have to go to all this trouble. It wasn't trouble. I like baking. Elizabeth looked between them, her expression shifting to something Cade recognized with mounting dread. It was her I knew it face, the one she'd worn when he was 12 and tried to convince her he hadn't been the one who broke the garage window. Well, come in, come in. Don't just stand there on the porch. She ushered them inside, already chattering about lunch and how long it had been since Cade visited, and wasn't Nyla lovely? The house smelled like his childhood, lemon polish and fresh flowers, and something baking in the oven. Everything was clean but lived in, comfortable in ways his penthouse would never be. Photos lined the walls, a timeline of his life before everything went dark. Cade tried not to look at them, tried not to see the boy he'd been before his father's world swallowed him whole. Sit, sit. Elizabeth gestured them toward the dining room table already set for 3. I made pot roast. I know it's your favorite, Cade, even though you probably haven't eaten anything that wasn't prepared by a professional chef in years. Mom, don't mom me. You're too thin. When's the last time you had a home-cooked meal? Cade couldn't remember. Nyla caught his eye across the table, clearly trying not to laugh. Lunch was surprisingly painless. Elizabeth asked Nyla about her work, her family, her plans for the future. Nyla answered honestly, not trying to impress or perform, just being herself. She talked about the bakery dream with the same passion Cade had heard at the diner, and Elizabeth listened with genuine interest. A bakery, his mother said thoughtfully. That's wonderful, dear. The city needs more small businesses run by people who actually care. Too many corporate chains, not enough heart. That's what I think. Nyla glanced at Cade. Your son's been helping me figure out the zoning requirements and permit processes. He's actually really good at cutting through bureaucratic nonsense. Is he now? Elizabeth's smile was knowing. Cade's always been good at getting what he wants when he sets his mind to it. Mom? What? It's true. You were the most stubborn child. Once you decided you wanted something, nothing could stop you. She turned back to Nyla. Did he tell you about the time he was 8 and decided he wanted to build a treehouse? Please don't. He spent 3 months drawing plans, calculating measurements, researching structural integrity. 3 months. And he was 8. Most kids just nail some boards to a tree and hope for the best. Not Cade. He had blueprints. Nyla was grinning now. Did the treehouse get built? Oh, yes. It was beautiful. Perfectly level, structurally sound, complete with a pulley system for getting supplies up and down. Elizabeth's expression softened. His father was so proud. Said Cade had the mind of an engineer. The mention of his father dimmed the mood slightly. Nyla noticed, reached under the table to squeeze Cade's hand once. A brief touch, grounding him. What happened to the treehouse? She asked. Still there, Elizabeth said. In the backyard. I can't bring myself to take it down. It reminds me of when things were simpler. Can I see it? Cade's mother looked at him, something soft and sad in her eyes. Of course, dear, Cade can show you. I'll clean up here and cut into that gorgeous pie you brought. They escaped to the backyard, Nyla following Cade down a worn path to a massive oak tree in the back corner. The treehouse was still there, weathered but intact, exactly as he remembered it. Wow, Neela said, craning her neck to look up. You really were a little architect. I was a kid who liked building things. And now you're an adult who builds empires instead of tree houses. She walked around the tree, examining the structure. Can we go up? It's probably not safe anymore. I'm not asking if it's safe. I'm asking if we can go up. Against his better judgment, Cade climbed the ladder first, testing each rung. They held. At the top, he extended a hand to help Nyla through the entrance. The treehouse was smaller than he remembered. Of course it was. He'd been 8 when he built it, but still structurally sound. Someone, probably his mother, had put cushions up here at some point. They sat facing each other in the cramped space, knees almost touching. This is nice, Neela said. Peaceful. I used to hide up here when my father brought his associates to the house. Before I understood what they really were, what he really was. I just knew they made my mother nervous, and the house felt wrong when they were there. How old were you when you figured it out? 12. There was a situation. A man who owed my father money. He came to the house begging for more time. My father had him beaten in our driveway. Cade stared at the wooden slats of the treehouse floor. I watched from my bedroom window, and I understood that my father wasn't a businessman. He was a monster. But you took over his empire anyway. By the time he died, I was already in too deep. I knew too much, had done too much. Walking away wasn't an option. Nyla was quiet for a moment. Did you ever want to? Walk away, I mean? Every day. The admission came easier than it should have. But wanting something and doing it are different things. The empire needed leadership, or it would have collapsed into chaos. People, good people who worked for my father, who relied on the structure he'd built, would have gotten hurt. So I stayed, made it mine, tried to make it better, or at least less terrible. That's a hell of a burden to carry. It's the burden I chose. Did you, though? Nyla shifted closer, her voice gentle. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you were a kid who inherited a nightmare and convinced yourself you could control it. That's not the same as choosing. Cade looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd walked into his office demanding his ID, who'd refused his money and his power, who'd somehow talked him into visiting his mother and sitting in a childhood treehouse discussing things he'd never said aloud to anyone. What am I doing, Neela? Right now? Sitting in a treehouse? You know what I mean. Yeah, I do. She reached out, touched his face briefly. I think you're trying to figure out if there's a version of your life that includes something other than violence and control. And I think that scares you more than any enemy you've ever faced. It does. Good. Fear means you're still human, means you haven't completely disappeared into the armor. Her hand dropped. But Cade, I need you to be honest with me about something. Anything. What happens when your world realizes you care about me? What happens when your enemies figure out that I'm not just some random woman you're passing time with? Nyla's voice was steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. Because I'm starting to care about you, and that's terrifying enough without adding murder and kidnapping to the mix. Cade wanted to lie, wanted to tell her it would be fine, that he could keep her safe, that his world and his feelings for her could coexist without consequence. But she'd asked for honesty. I don't know, he said. I can protect you. I have the resources, the security, the connections, but protection isn't the same as safety. Once people know you matter to me, you become leverage, a target, and I can't guarantee that I can keep you untouched by that reality. So what do? We end this before it gets worse, before someone notices, before you get hurt because of me. The words tasted like poison, but he forced them out anyway. That's the smart play. Probably. Nyla, but I'm tired of always making the smart play. She moved closer until they were sharing the same air. I'm tired of being careful and safe and protecting myself from anything that might be complicated. Maybe I want to be reckless for once. Maybe I want to care about someone even if it's dangerous. That's insane. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I'm already past the point of backing out. She kissed him then, quick and soft, barely more than a brush of lips. So I guess we're doing this. Whatever this is. Cade pulled her closer, kissed her properly, and felt 15 years of ice crack somewhere in his chest. It wasn't smooth, wasn't perfect, wasn't any of the things movies promised. It was desperate and a little bit scared and completely, utterly real. And that made it more dangerous than anything he'd faced in his entire life. They stayed up in the treehouse for another 20 minutes, not talking much, just existing in the same space. When they finally climbed down, his mother was waiting on the back porch with a knowing smile and slices of pie. I like her, Elizabeth said quietly while Nyla was in the bathroom. She's good for you. She's not mine to keep, Mom. Then maybe you should work on changing that. His mother touched his face the way she had when he was young, before everything fell apart. You deserve to be happy, Cade. Even if you don't believe it. Even if your father convinced you otherwise. Happy doesn't exist in my world. Then maybe it's time to build a different world. They left an hour later, Nyla carrying leftovers his mother had insisted she take. In the car, she was quiet, thoughtful. Your mom's great, she finally said. She likes you. Yeah, I got that impression when she cornered me in the bathroom and told me I was the best thing that's happened to you in years. Neela glanced at him. No pressure or anything. She's always been optimistic. Or maybe she just sees something you're too stubborn to admit. Which is? That you're capable of more than just survival. That there might be a version of your life where you're actually happy instead of just powerful. Kay drove in silence, processing that. Processing everything. The kiss, the conversation, the way Nyla had fit into his mother's house like she belonged there. The way he'd felt in that treehouse, more himself than he'd been in 15 years. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was the first real thing he'd felt since his father's funeral. Stay with me tonight, he said. Nyla turned to look at him. What? Stay with me. At my place. No expectations, no pressure. I don't want this day to end yet. Cade, I know. I know all the reasons it's a bad idea. I know I should keep my distance, keep you safe, keep everything compartmentalized and controlled. But I'm asking anyway. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Neela settled back in her seat, staring out at the city passing by. But if this ends badly, I'm telling your mom it's your fault. Deal. They drove back to the city as evening settled over the skyline, and Cade felt something unfamiliar settle into his bones. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of something that would either save him or destroy everything he'd built. Either way, he wasn't stopping now. The penthouse felt different with Nyla in it. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city 47 floors below, and Cade watched her from the kitchen, where he was attempting to make coffee without his chef's help. The machine was more complicated than it needed to be, all Italian engineering and precise measurements, and he was pretty sure he was doing it wrong. This place is insane, Nyla said without turning around. You can see the entire city from here. That's the point. Cade gave up on the coffee machine, poured whiskey instead. Want a drink? It's 7 o'clock. Is that a yes or a no? She turned, took in the glass he was offering, the expensive bottle. The casual way he held it like drinking alone on a Saturday evening was normal. Why do I get the feeling you do this a lot? The drinking alone thing? Because I do. He didn't see the point in lying. It helps quiet the noise. What noise? All of it. The empire, the decisions, the constant weight of knowing that one wrong move could get people killed. Cade took a drink, felt the burn settle into his chest. The noise in my head that sounds suspiciously like my father telling me I'm not ruthless enough, Not strong enough, not enough. Nyla crossed the room, took the glass from his hand, and set it on the counter. Okay, new rule. When I'm here, you don't drink alone and you don't listen to your dead father's voice telling you you're not enough. Deal? I'm not sure I know how to do that. Then I'll teach you. She grabbed his hand, pulled him toward the massive couch that cost more than her car. Come on, we're going to do something radical. Which is, we're going to sit here and talk like normal people who aren't carrying the weight of criminal empires or dead fathers or any of that heavy stuff. We're just going to be human for a few hours. Cade let her pull him down onto the couch, let her curl up against his side like it was the most natural thing in the world. I don't know how to be just human anymore. Lucky for you, I'm a good teacher. Nyla grabbed the remote from the coffee table. When's the last time you watched something just for fun? No business, no strategic thinking, just mindless entertainment? I don't remember. Of course you don't. She started scrolling through streaming options, her expression thoughtful. Okay, here's what we're doing. We're watching something stupid, something with explosions and car chases and absolutely zero emotional depth, and you're going to turn off that terrifying brain of yours and just enjoy it. That's your plan? That's my plan. Unless you have a better idea for how to teach a crime boss to be human again. Cade didn't, so he sat there while Nyla queued up some action movie he'd never heard of, settled against him with an ease that should have been impossible, and tried to remember what it felt like to just exist without calculating angles and threats. It was harder than it should have been. Halfway through the movie, something about a heist gone wrong and a getaway driver, his phone buzzed. Then again, then a third time in rapid succession. Nyla paused the movie. You need to get that? It's probably nothing. Your phone doesn't vibrate like that for nothing. She shifted so he could reach his pocket. Go ahead. I'm not going anywhere. Cade pulled out his phone, felt his stomach drop at the messages. Marcus. We have a situation. Northern Territory. Marcus. They took out one of our warehouses. 3 dead, 5 injured. Marcus. Boss, I need you to call me. Now. I have to make a call, Cade said, already standing. Nyla's expression shifted from relaxed to guarded in an instant. What's wrong? Work. He moved to his office, dialed Marcus. The call connected before the first ring finished. Boss, we've got a problem. Marcus's voice was tight, controlled. Mikhail made his move. Hit the warehouse on Porter Street about 2 hours ago. Professional job, well coordinated. He's sending a message. Casualties? 3 dead, all security, 5 injured, 2 critical. The shipment's gone. 50 keys of product, street value around $3 million. And boss, there's something else. Cade's hand tightened on the phone. What? He left a message, said this was just the opening move, said he knows about your weakness now, and he's going to exploit it until you fold. My weakness? He didn't specify. But boss, the timing, right after you started spending time with the courier, I don't think that's coincidence. The bottom dropped out of Cade's world. He looked through the office door to where Nyla sat on his couch, trusting him, choosing him despite every reason not to. How many people know about Nyla? His voice was ice. Just me and the detail I put on her building. Discreet surveillance, like you asked. But boss, if Mikhail has people watching you, if he's been paying attention to pattern changes, pull the detail, now, and get me everything we have on Mikhail's operations. Every location, every asset, every person he values. I want it on my desk in an hour. Boss, if we're going to war, we're not going to war, Marcus. War is loud and messy and draws attention. I'm going to dismantle him piece by piece until there's nothing left. Cade's mind was already running scenarios, calculating moves, sliding back into the cold strategic thinking that had kept him alive for 15 years. And Marcus? Double security on my mother. If he knows about Nyla, he might know about her too. Already done. I sent a team the minute the warehouse went down. Good. Call a meeting with the inner circle for tomorrow morning and send someone to clean up Porter Street. I want those families taken care of, the dead and the injured. Full benefits, college funds for the kids, whatever they need. Understood, boss, about the girl. She's not part of this. Keep her out of it. With respect, she's already part of it. The minute Mikhail mentioned a weakness, the minute you started caring about her, she became a target. You can't keep her out of something she's already in. Cade ended the call before he said something he'd regret. Marcus was right, which made it worse. The moment he'd let Nyla into his world, into his life, he'd painted a target on her back. He stood there for a long moment, staring at his reflection in the darkened office window. The face looking back was the one his father would have recognized. Cold, calculating, ready to do terrible things to protect what was his. Nyla appeared in the doorway, backlit by the living room lights. That didn't sound like nothing. It's handled. Cade, I'm not stupid. I heard enough to know something bad happened. She crossed her arms, that familiar stubbornness settling into her expression. Talk to me. Someone hit one of my operations. 3 people died. It's business, Nyla. It happens. Business. She said the word like it tasted bad. 3 people died and you're calling it business? What else would I call it? Cade moved past her, back toward the living room, toward the whiskey he'd abandoned. This is my world. Violence, retaliation, power plays. I told you it was dangerous. And now what? You're going to retaliate? More violence, more death, and the cycle just continues? That's how it works. You hit my people, I hit yours harder. It's the only language anyone understands in this world. Nyla followed him, her voice rising. That's not a world, Cade. That's a nightmare you keep choosing to live in. I don't choose this. The words came out sharper than he intended, his control finally cracking. You think I want this? You think I want to get phone calls telling me 3 people are dead because some ambitious bastard wants to prove he's stronger than me? You think I sleep well knowing that every decision I make could end with someone in a box? Then stop. Walk away. Let someone else. There is no someone else. Cade slammed the whiskey glass down hard enough to crack it. You don't understand what happens if I walk away. The power vacuum alone would start a war that would consume half the city. The people who work for me, who depend on the structure I've built, would be caught in the crossfire. Innocent people would die because I decided I wanted out. So you're trapped. Yes, I'm trapped in a cage I inherited and fortified and can't escape without causing more damage than staying. He stared at the cracked glass, at the amber liquid seeping onto his expensive counter. And now I've trapped you too. Just by caring about you. Just by letting you into my life for 5 minutes, I've made you a target. Nyla was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer, sadder. What did they say? In the call. What was the message? Cade didn't want to tell her, wanted to protect her from the reality that was already closing in. But she'd asked for honesty, and he'd promised to give it. Mikhail, the man who hit my warehouse, said he knows about my weakness. Said he's going to exploit it. Cade finally looked at her, saw his fear reflected in her eyes. He didn't specify what the weakness was, but the timing suggests he knows about you. Oh. Cade moved toward her, stopping just short of touching. I can protect you. I have the resources, the security, the connections. But Nyla, I need you to understand what that means. It means guards, surveillance, restricted movement. It means your life changes. Your freedom changes. It means becoming part of my world whether you want to be or not. And if I say no, if I tell you I want out before this gets worse, every instinct screamed at him to lie. To tell her she could walk away clean, that he'd protect her anyway, that her choice didn't matter because he'd already made it for her. But he'd promised honesty. Then you walk away, and I make sure Mikhail knows you're not a weakness anymore. I'd make it public that you mean nothing to me, humiliate you, hurt you emotionally, make it clear you're just another transaction that didn't work out. The words tasted like ash. It would be believable, people would accept it, and you'd be safe. But you'd do it. You'd hurt me to save me. Yes, Nyla laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know what the really messed up part is? I actually believe you'd think that was noble, that destroying what we have to keep me safe would somehow be the right choice. It would keep you alive. It would keep me safe, she corrected. Those aren't the same thing. Safe means breathing, sure. But it also means alone, hurt, and wondering if any of this was real or just another game you were playing. It's real. The admission came out rough, barely controlled. Whatever this is between us, it's the most real thing in my life. Which is exactly why I'll destroy it if it means you survive. That's not your choice to make. The hell it isn't. You don't understand what these people are capable of. What Mikhail would do to you just to prove a point. I've seen it, Nyla. I've seen what happens to people who get used as leverage against me, and I will not let that happen to you. So what's the alternative? I let you put me in a gilded cage, become your protected property, give up my job, my apartment, my entire life because you decided it was safer? If that's what it takes. And what about what I want? What about my agency, my choices, my life? Neela's voice was shaking now, anger and fear bleeding through. I'm not a chess piece you can move around your board, Cade. I'm a person, and I deserve to have a say in what happens to my own life. Not when that life is in danger because of me. Especially then. She grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at her. Listen to me. I know you're scared. I know this is new and terrifying and completely out of your control. But you don't get to make unilateral decisions about my safety and call it love. That's not protection, that's possession. And I won't be owned, not even by someone who thinks he's saving me. I'm trying to keep you alive, by killing who I am, by taking away everything that makes me me. Nyla's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. You want to know the difference between you and your father? He built an empire on fear. You're building one on control. But both of you forgot that people aren't property. We're not things to be managed and protected and locked away. The words hit like a physical blow. Cade stepped back, her hands falling from his shoulders, the space between them suddenly vast. What do you want me to do? He asked quietly. Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. I want you to trust me. I want you to believe that I can make my own choices, even dangerous ones. And I want you to stop treating me like I'm breakable just because you're finally letting yourself care about someone. You are breakable. Everyone is. So are you. But I'm not trying to lock you away to keep you safe. Nyla wiped her eyes roughly, angry at the tears. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to deal with this Mikhail situation however you need to deal with it. And I'm going to keep living my life, working my jobs, chasing my dream. And yes, I'll be careful. I'll take reasonable precautions. But I won't hide, and I won't let you turn me into someone I'm not. That's not safe. No, it's not. But it's honest. And if we're really doing this, if we're really trying to build something real, then it has to be built on trust, not control. She grabbed her bag from the couch. I'm going home now, not because I'm running away, but because we both need space to think about what we're actually doing here. Nyla, wait. No. You need to figure out if you can actually be with someone without trying to control every aspect of their life. And I need to figure out if I'm strong enough to love someone whose world wants to destroy me. She stopped at the door, looked back. I care about you, Cade. More than I should, more than is smart. But I won't sacrifice who I am to be safe. Not even for you. Then she was gone, and Cade was alone in his expensive penthouse with a cracked whiskey glass and the sound of his father's voice in his head telling him he'd failed. Again. He stood there for a long moment, then grabbed his phone. Marcus, the meeting tomorrow. Move it up to tonight. And I want every piece of information we have on Mikhail Volkov. Everything. His operations, his properties, his family, his weaknesses. I want to know what he values most in this world. Boss, it's almost 8. Getting everyone together on this short notice? I don't care what time it is. Make it happen. We end this tonight. What are you planning? I'm planning to make sure Mikhail understands exactly what happens when he threatens what's mine. And I'm going to do it in a way that makes it clear to everyone else that touching Nyla Carter is a death sentence. Boss, that might not be the smartest. I'm not asking for smart, Marcus. I'm asking for effective. Cade grabbed his jacket, checked his gun out of habit. Set it up. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The meeting happened in a warehouse on the south side, neutral territory where Cade's inner circle gathered when things got serious. 8 men, all of them dangerous, all of them loyal, not because they feared him, but because he'd proven he'd protect them and theirs. Cade laid out the situation in precise detail. The warehouse hit, the casualties, Mikhail's message. What he didn't mention was Nyla. Didn't give them the specific weakness Mikhail thought he'd found. That information stayed locked down, known only to Marcus. So what's the play? Dmitri asked, a scarred veteran who'd served Cade's father and chosen to stay when Cade took over. We hit back twice as hard, make an example? No, we hit smart. Cade pulled up a digital map of the city, marked locations in red. Mikhail's strength is distribution. He controls 3 major routes into the city, uses them to move product and weapons. We don't need to kill him. We need to make him irrelevant. How? This from James, his financial strategist, the one who made the dirty money clean. We cut his supply lines, all 3 routes, simultaneously. His suppliers think he's weak, they'll find new partners. His buyers think he's unreliable, they'll go elsewhere. And his people think he can't protect them, they'll jump ship before he sinks. Cade highlighted key intersections. We have the resources to strangle his operations without firing a shot. We make it economic, not violent. That's not how we usually handle things, Dmitri said carefully. No, it's not. But violence creates martyrs and revenge cycles. This creates failure, and failure is permanent. Cade looked around the table. Mikhail thinks I'm weak because I'm trying to be better than my father. He thinks compassion means soft. So we show him that smart beats brutal every time. Marcus spoke up from the corner. What about the message he sent? About knowing your weakness? He's bluffing. Testing to see if I react emotionally instead of strategically. We don't give him that satisfaction. We respond with precision, not rage. Cade closed the map display. I want teams on each route by midnight. No violence unless absolutely necessary. We make his shipments disappear, his contacts ghost him, his reputation crumble. By this time next week, Mikhail Volkov is a footnote. The men around the table exchanged looks. This was different from how his father would have handled it, different from what they expected. "You sure about this, boss?" Dmitri asked. "Taking the long road when the short one's available?" "I'm sure. My father built this empire on fear and blood. It worked, but it also made him paranoid, isolated, and ultimately killed him. I'm building something different, something sustainable. And that means showing restraint when we can, brutality only when we must. And if Mikhail escalates, then we adapt, but we start smart." Cade stood, the meeting clearly over. "Get it done. I want updates every 2 hours." They filtered out, leaving just Marcus and Cade in the warehouse. "She left," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. Going to tell me what happened?" "I tried to protect her by controlling her. She told me that wasn't protection. It was possession." Cade stared at the empty warehouse. "She was right. So what now?" "Now I prove I can keep her safe without putting her in a cage. I dismantle Mikhail, eliminate the threat, and hope she's willing to give me another chance to not screw this up." "That's a lot of hoping for someone who doesn't believe in it." "Yeah, well, apparently I'm learning." Cade headed for the door, exhaustion settling into his bones. "Keep me posted on the operations. And Marcus, make sure the surveillance on Nyla is invisible. I don't want her to know. I don't want her to feel watched. But I need to know she's safe." "Already done." Of course it was. Marcus had been reading Cade's mind for 15 years. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in controlled destruction. Mikhail's supply routes dried up as key contacts suddenly became unavailable or found better offers elsewhere. His product shipments went missing, not violently seized, just gone, rerouted through channels he didn't control. His buyers got better prices from competitors who appeared out of nowhere with suspiciously well-timed offers. By day 3, Mikhail was hemorrhaging money and credibility. By day 4, his own people were questioning his leadership. By day 5, he was desperate enough to make a mistake. "He's requesting a meeting," Marcus said, walking into Cade's office with a tablet. "Says he wants to negotiate terms." "Terms for what?" "Surrender, essentially. He's willing to exit the Northern Territories completely, hand over his remaining operations to you, in exchange for being allowed to leave the city alive." Cade leaned back in his chair, studying the request. "What's the catch?" "No catch that I can see. He's beaten and he knows it. This is survival, not strategy. Set it up. Neutral location, full security, tomorrow night." Cade signed off on a contract without reading it, trusting his lawyers had done their job. "And Marcus? Make sure Nyla doesn't know about any of this. If something goes wrong, I don't want her anywhere near the fallout." "About that?" Marcus set his tablet down. "She's been asking questions. Called my number twice. Left messages wanting to know if you were okay." Cade's chest tightened. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. But boss, you can't keep her in the dark forever. Eventually she's going to realize that her safety came at a cost, and she's going to want to know what that cost was. Let me worry about that." But Marcus was right. Nyla had asked for honesty, for trust, for agency in her own life. And here he was, making decisions about her safety without her input, fighting battles she didn't know existed. He was doing exactly what she'd asked him not to do. The meeting with Mikhail happened in an abandoned commercial kitchen on the east side. one of Cade's properties that had been sitting empty for months. Cade arrived with Marcus and two others, Mikhail with a similar small contingent. The man looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Hollow-eyed, hollow-cheeked, the swagger completely gone. Voss. Mikhail didn't offer a hand, didn't bother with pleasantries. You made your point. Did I? Because it seems like you're still breathing, which suggests I was remarkably restrained. I underestimated you. Won't happen again. There won't be an again. You're leaving the city per our agreement. If you ever come back, if you ever so much as think about operating in my territory again, I won't be this kind. Cade gestured to Marcus, who produced a contract. Sign this. It transfers your remaining assets to my organization, with provisions for your people to be absorbed into our operations if they choose. No bloodshed, no revenge. You just disappear. Mikhail read through the contract, his jaw tight. And if I refuse? Then we stop being civilized and I let Dmitri handle things his way. He's old school. You won't enjoy it. You really think you're different from your father, don't you? Mikhail's laugh was bitter. You think because you use economics instead of bullets, because you negotiate instead of execute, that makes you better? You're the same, Voss, just with better PR. Maybe, but I sleep better at night. Can you say the same? Mikhail didn't answer. He signed the contract, shoved it across the table, stood. You made an enemy today. No, I made an example. There's a difference. Cade didn't stand, didn't show any deference. You threatened what was mine. I responded proportionally and strategically. Be grateful I didn't respond emotionally. The weakness he mentioned, Marcus said after Mikhail left. He never brought it up, never tried to use it as leverage, because he didn't actually know what it was. He was fishing, hoping I'd reveal something he could exploit. Cade signed the counter-contract, making the transfer official. Which means Nyla's safe. The threat's neutralized, and she never has to know how close it came. You gonna tell her anyway? Cade thought about that. Thought about Nyla's face when she'd accused him of possession, disguised as protection. Thought about her demand for honesty, for agency, for trust. Yeah, he said, I'm gonna tell her everything, and then I'm gonna let her decide if I'm worth the risk. That's growth, boss. That's terrifying. But Cade was already pulling out his phone, typing a message before he could talk himself out of it. The text to Nyla was simple. Can we talk? I have things to tell you, things you deserve to know. Her response came 5 minutes later. Lose 1 hour. Cade showed up early, anxious in ways he hadn't been since his first major negotiation at 19. Nyla arrived exactly on time, looking exhausted and wary and still somehow the most real thing in his life. She slid into the booth across from him without preamble. You look like hell. Haven't been sleeping much. Yeah, I got that impression from the 17 missed calls. She flagged down the waitress, ordered coffee, waited until they were alone again. So talk. What did you need to tell me? Cade told her everything. The warehouse hit. Mikhail's threat. The strategic dismantling of his operations. The meeting earlier tonight. He didn't soften it. Didn't edit the violence or the danger or his own calculated cruelty. He gave her the truth, raw and complete. When he finished, Nyla was quiet for a long time. So you protected me, she finally said. Yes. Without telling me I was in danger. Yes. Because you thought I couldn't handle it. No. Because I thought if you knew, you'd insist on being involved, and I couldn't risk that. Cade reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. You were right. What you said at my place. I was trying to control you instead of trust you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I made decisions about your safety without your input. I'm sorry I treated you like property instead of a partner. And I'm sorry I keep screwing this up even when I'm trying not to. Nyla's eyes were bright, unreadable. Are you done? Yeah, I'm done. Good. She grabbed his hand, held on tight. Now it's my turn to talk. And you're going to listen without interrupting. Deal? Deal. I'm not stupid, Cade. I knew the minute you told me about the warehouse that I was in danger. I knew that getting close to you meant becoming a target. And I chose to keep seeing you anyway. She squeezed his hand harder. But here's what I need you to understand. I don't need you to protect me from information. I don't need you to shield me from reality. What I need is for you to trust that I can handle the truth and make informed decisions about my own life. I know. I'm working on it. Work faster. Because if we're going to make this work, and I want to make this work, despite all the very good reasons I shouldn't, then it has to be a partnership. You don't get to be the knight in shining armor who makes all the decisions. Sometimes you're going to have to be the flawed human who admits he's scared and asks for help. I'm terrified, Kate admitted, of losing you, of getting you hurt, of being the reason your life falls apart. I know. I'm terrified too. But we don't get to let fear make our choices for us. Nyla's thumb traced patterns on his palm. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me when situations like this arise. You're going to let me weigh in on my own safety, and you're going to trust that I'm strong enough to handle the reality of your world. And in exchange? In exchange, I'll trust you to keep me as safe as possible without suffocating me. I'll take reasonable precautions, and I'll try to be patient when your control issues inevitably flare up again. She smiled slightly. Because they will. You're not fixed, Cade. You're just trying, and that's enough. Is it? Enough? For now, yeah. For now, it's enough. Nyla stood, pulled him up with her. Come on, walk me home. It's 3 a.m. I know what time it is. Walk me home anyway. They walked through empty streets, past closed shops and sleeping buildings, the city quiet around them. Nyla kept hold of his hand the entire way, a simple touch that felt more intimate than anything else they'd shared. At her building, she stopped, turned to face him. I'm not inviting you up. I know. Not because I don't want to, but because we both need to slow down, figure out what this actually is before we complicate it further. Smart. One of us has to be. She kissed him then, slow and deliberate, a promise and a question all at once. But Cade? I'm all in, scared and uncertain and probably making a huge mistake, but I'm in. So don't make me regret it. I'll try not to. Good. Now go home. Get some actual sleep. And tomorrow, we're going to start figuring out how to build something real in the middle of your impossible world. Cade watched her disappear into her building, stood there until her apartment light came on 4 floors up. Then he pulled out his phone. Marcus, pull all surveillance on Nyla Carter. I want it gone by morning. Boss, that's not... I know it's not smart, but it's right. She deserves privacy, even from me, especially from me. Cade started walking toward where his car waited 3 blocks away. And Marcus, clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon. I have a business loan application to help someone prepare. The bakery? Yeah, the bakery. Not by buying it for her or greasing wheels she doesn't know about, just by helping her do it right. Cade felt something almost like hope settle into his chest. Turns out there's more than one way to support someone you care about. Growth, boss. Actual growth. Don't sound so surprised. I'm capable of learning. Never doubted it. Just didn't expect it to happen in my lifetime. Cade ended the call, looked up at the sky just starting to lighten with pre-dawn gray. Somewhere in this city, Nyla was getting ready for another day of courier work and bakery dreams and dealing with a crime boss who was trying very hard not to screw up the best thing that had happened to him in 15 years. It wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But it was real. And for the first time since his father died, that felt like enough. 3 months later, Cade found himself doing something he'd never imagined. Standing in line at a permit office, holding a numbered ticket, waiting his turn like everyone else. Nyla stood beside him, reviewing her application for the 4th time, her anxiety practically vibrating off her in waves. Stop fidgeting, Cade said quietly. I'm not fidgeting. You've read that same page 6 times in the last 10 minutes, because I want to make sure everything's perfect. She looked up at him, eyes wide with barely controlled panic. What if they say no? What if I missed something? What if... Then we fix it and reapply. This isn't life or death, Nyla. Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose entire future depends on a bureaucrat in a bad mood. But she was smiling slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing. Thanks for coming. I know waiting in government offices isn't exactly your thing. My thing is wherever you are. The words came out easier now after 3 months of practice. 3 months of learning how to be human again, one small moment at a time. The past 90 days had been a study in controlled chaos. Cade still ran his empire. The business didn't stop just because he'd found something worth living for beyond power. But he'd learned to compartmentalize better, to keep the violence and strategy separate from the small, normal moments he was building with Nyla. Morning coffee at Lou's before her early shifts. Weekend visits to his mother, who'd adopted Nyla with an enthusiasm that bordered on embarrassing. Late nights at his penthouse where they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing, where Nyla would fall asleep on his couch and he'd cover her with a blanket and just watch her breathe. It wasn't perfect. They fought about his overprotective instincts, about her stubborn independence, about the fundamental incompatibility of trying to build something normal in the middle of his impossible world. But they fought honestly, and they always came back to each other. And slowly, incrementally, they were building something real. "Number 47, a bored voice called from the counter. Nyla checked her ticket, grabbed Cade's hand. "That's us." "Okay, here we go." The clerk was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who'd clearly processed 1,000 applications just like this one. She took Nyla's paperwork, scanned through it with practiced efficiency, asked clarifying questions about location and square footage and business projections. Cade stayed quiet, let Nyla handle it herself. It killed him not to step in, not to use his influence to smooth the process, but this was hers. She'd been clear about that from the beginning. "Everything looks in order," the clerk finally said, stamping a form with decisive finality. "Pending inspection and final approval, your permit should be processed within 30 days. You'll receive notification by mail." Nyla's entire face lit up. 30 days? That's it? That's it. Next. They stumbled out of the office into bright afternoon sunlight, and Nyla was practically vibrating with joy. "Oh my God! Oh my God, it's actually happening. It's really happening." Cade pulled her into a hug, felt her laughter against his chest, and thought that this moment of pure, uncomplicated happiness was worth more than every empire he'd ever built. "I'm proud of you," he said into her hair. "I haven't even opened yet." "Doesn't matter. You did this yourself. Every step, every dollar, every choice. That's worth being proud of." Nyla pulled back, looked up at him with eyes that were suspiciously bright. "Thank you for not trying to fix this for me, for letting me do it the hard way. It wasn't easy." "I know, but you did it anyway." She kissed him quickly, pulled away before he could deepen it. "Come on. I need to celebrate with pie and terrible coffee, and Luz is calling my name." They were halfway to the diner when Cade's phone rang. Marcus, which meant business. "I have to take this," he said apologetically. "Go ahead. I'll grab us a table." Cade stepped away, answered. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, exactly, but we've got a situation developing. The Vancouver crew is making noise about expanding south. They're testing boundaries, seeing if we'll push back. And I think they're looking for a fight. Not a big one, just enough to establish dominance." Marcus's voice was careful. "How do you want to handle it?" Cade looked through the diner window, saw Nyla settling into their usual booth, saw her smile at the waitress who knew their order by heart, saw the life he was building, one ordinary moment at a time. "Schedule a meeting," he said. "Professional, neutral territory. I'll negotiate new boundaries, give them some of what they want, establish clear lines they don't cross. No violence unless they force it." "You sure? Your father would have—" "I'm not my father. He built an empire on fear and died alone because everyone around him was either terrified or plotting his downfall. I'm building something different." Cade turned away from the window. "Set it up for next week. And Marcus, make sure they understand this is a one-time offer. If they push after we negotiate, then we respond harder. But we try diplomacy first." "Copy that. Oh, and boss, there's something else. Your mother called, said she needs to talk to you about something important." Cade's stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" "She sounded fine. Happy, actually. Just said it was important and she wanted to see you this weekend." Marcus paused. "Both of you." "I'll call her." "Thanks, Marcus." Cade pocketed his phone, slid into the booth across from Nyla. She was already halfway through a slice of apple pie, her permit application spread out on the table like a trophy. "Everything okay?" she asked, around a mouthful of pie. "Business, nothing urgent." He stole her fork, took a bite. Still mediocre, still somehow perfect. "My mother wants to see us this weekend. Both of us. She said it was important." "Important how? Good important or bad important?" Marcus said she sounded happy. Then it's probably good. Nyla reclaimed her fork. Though knowing your mom, she's probably planning to show me your embarrassing baby photos or something equally traumatizing. That's exactly what she's planning. Great. Can't wait. Saturday came with unusual anxiety. Cade had learned to read his mother's moods over the years, and the careful excitement in her voice when he'd called suggested something bigger than baby photos. They made the drive in comfortable silence, Nyla humming along to the radio, Cade trying not to catastrophize about what important news his mother might have. Elizabeth met them at the door with her usual enthusiasm, but there was something different about her, a brightness, an energy that Cade hadn't seen in years. Come in, come in. I made lunch, your favorite Cade. Pot roast. She ushered them inside, talking rapidly about the weather and the garden, and had they seen the new restaurant downtown. Nervous energy, Cade realized. His mother was nervous. They sat down to lunch, made small talk, danced around whatever elephant was sitting at the table with them. Finally, Cade couldn't take it anymore. Mom, what's going on? You said this was important. Elizabeth set down her fork, folded her hands carefully. I've been doing some thinking. About my life, about what I want for the years I have left. And I've made a decision. Cade's chest tightened. What kind of decision? I'm selling the house. She said it simply, like it was no big deal. Like she wasn't talking about the house Cade had grown up in, the last connection to a life before everything went dark. What? Why? Because it's too big for one person. Because every room reminds me of your father, and not always in good ways. And because I'm tired of living in the past. Elizabeth's voice was gentle, but firm. I'm buying a smaller place in the city, a condo near the park, close to you, close to life. Somewhere I can start over. Cade felt something crack in his chest. The treehouse? We'll have to go. I know, sweetheart, but that's part of moving forward. Letting go of what was so we can make room for what could be. His mother reached across the table, took his hand. You've been doing it these past few months, building something new instead of just maintaining what your father left behind. I want to do the same. Neela squeezed his other hand under the table, silent support. When? Cade managed. I've already accepted an offer. Closing is in 6 weeks. Elizabeth smiled, and it was genuine, happy. I know this is hard for you. That house holds a lot of memories, good and bad. But Cade, we can't live in memories forever. At some point, we have to choose to live in the present. He stopped, tried again. I don't know how to let it go. Yes, you do. You've been learning for months now. His mother looked at Nyla, her smile widening. You've been teaching him, haven't you, dear? How to live instead of just survive. Nyla looked uncomfortable with the attention. I think he's been teaching himself. I just happened to be around for it. Don't sell yourself short. My son hasn't looked this alive in 15 years. Elizabeth released Cade's hand, picked up her water glass. Which brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk about. I want you both to help me move. Not your security team, not professional movers, just us. The three of us, packing up the past, making choices about what to keep and what to leave behind. Mom, I can hire I don't want hired help. I want my son. And I want the woman who's making him human again. Her voice turned soft. Please, Cade, let me have this. Let us do this together, as a family. Family. The word hit harder than it should have. Cade looked at Nyla, saw his own uncertainty reflected back. But underneath it, he saw willingness, saw her ready to step into this complicated, painful moment because it mattered to him. Okay, he said, we'll help. Good. Now eat your pot roast before it gets cold. And Nyla, dear, tell me more about the bakery. I want to know everything. The next 6 weeks passed in a strange blur of ordinary moments and monumental change. Cade negotiated boundaries with Vancouver, gave them some territory, established clear lines, walked away with a tentative peace that felt fragile but real. The permit for Nyla's bakery came through, and she spent every spare moment hunting for the perfect location, testing recipes, planning her future with an intensity that was beautiful to watch. And every weekend they went to his mother's house and packed up pieces of the past. Cade's childhood bedroom, frozen in time from the summer he was 17. His father's study, full of leather and mahogany and the smell of cigars and violence. The kitchen where his mother had cooked 1,000 meals, trying to maintain normalcy in an abnormal life. The living room where his father had conducted business, where deals were made and threats issued and power consolidated. Each room held ghosts, some good, most complicated. "Tell me about this," Nyla said one afternoon, holding up a framed photo from Cade's bedroom. A Little League team, a younger Cade front and center holding a trophy, his smile wide and uncomplicated. "City championship. I was 12. We won on a walk-off home run in the 9th inning." Cade took the photo, studied the boy he'd been. "My father came to that game. Only one he ever made it to, but he was there for the championship. Afterwards, he took me for ice cream and told me he was proud of me." "You miss him?" It wasn't a question. I missed the version of him I thought he was, before I understood what he really did, who he really was. Cade set the photo in the box marked for keeping. He wasn't a good man, but he was my father, and sometimes he tried to be a good dad. I don't know how to reconcile those two things. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe people are just complicated, and your father was more complicated than most. Nyla wrapped the photo in tissue paper, secured it carefully. "You're allowed to miss him and hate what he was at the same time. When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too busy being emotionally unavailable to notice." Cade pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being here. For not running when this got hard. For helping my mother pack up a house full of ghosts. Where else would I be?" But she was smiling, that tired, real smile he'd fallen in love with. "Besides, someone has to make sure you don't keep every single thing in this house for purely sentimental reasons. You were about to pack your father's ashtray collection. They're crystal. They're ashtrays from a man who smoked 3 packs a day and died of lung cancer. Let them go." She was right. About the ashtrays, about the need to let go, about all of it. The treehouse came down on the last weekend before closing. Cade insisted on doing it himself, climbing up with tools and intention, dismantling what he'd built piece by piece. Nyla and his mother watched from below, ready to catch whatever he handed down. It was harder than he'd expected. Each board he removed felt like erasing a piece of his childhood, the last connection to a time before he understood what monsters looked like. "You okay up there?" Nyla called. "Yeah, just taking my time." He found things he'd forgotten. A carved heart with his initials and a girl's name he could barely remember. A makeshift shelf holding comic books that had weathered years of exposure. A small metal box tucked into the corner, containing treasures from his 8-year-old self. A lucky penny, a baseball card, a photo of his parents before everything went wrong. They looked happy in the photo. Young, smiling, his mother laughing at something his father had said. Before the empire consumed them, before violence became normal, before Cade was born into a legacy he never wanted. He climbed down with the box, handed it to his mother. Elizabeth opened it, saw the photo, and tears spilled over. "I forgot this picture existed. Look at us. We were so young." "You were happy," Cade said quietly. "We were. For a while, we really were." She closed the box, held it to her chest. "Your father wasn't always the man he became. He made choices, terrible choices, and they changed him. But there was a time when he was just a boy who loved a girl and wanted to build a life with her." What changed? Power changed him. The more he accumulated, the more he needed, until it was the only thing that mattered. Until he'd sacrificed everything, his morality, his humanity, his family, on the altar of being untouchable. Elizabeth looked at Cade with eyes that knew too much. "Don't make his mistakes, sweetheart. Don't let the empire consume you the way it consumed him." "I'm trying not to. I know. And you're succeeding. You're choosing love over power, connection over control. You're choosing to be better." She glanced at Nyla, who was giving them space but clearly listening. "Hold on to that. Hold on to her. She's the real thing, and real things are rare in your world." "I know, Mom." The treehouse came down completely by evening. Cade stacked the lumber carefully, told himself he'd build something new with it someday. A bench for his mother's new condo, maybe. Something that honored the past without being trapped by it. They ordered pizza because Elizabeth's kitchen was already packed, sat on the floor of the empty living room eating from paper plates like it was normal. Like they were just a regular family, in a regular moment, nothing complicated about it. "I'm going to miss this house," Elizabeth said, looking around at the empty walls. "But I'm ready to leave it. ready for what comes next. What does come next? Nayla asked. Living. Actually living, not just existing in the shadow of what was. Elizabeth smiled at both of them. I'm going to take cooking classes, join a book club, maybe travel a little. All the things I put off because I was too busy being the crime boss's wife, too busy being afraid. You were never afraid, Cade said. Oh, honey, I was terrified every single day. Terrified your father would get killed. Terrified you'd follow in his footsteps. Terrified that the violence would consume everything good in our lives. She reached over, squeezed his hand. But fear doesn't have to be permanent. We can choose to step out of its shadow. We can choose different. That night, driving back to the city with Nyla asleep in the passenger seat, Cade thought about choices. About the ones his father had made, the ones he'd made, the ones he was still making every day. He'd inherited an empire built on fear and violence. Could have expanded it, could have become even more powerful than his father, could have chosen the path of least resistance. Instead, he was choosing this. A sleeping woman who refused to be impressed by his money, a mother learning to live instead of just survive, a life built on something other than power. It felt dangerous, it felt uncertain, it felt right. But the universe apparently had other plans. The attack came 2 weeks later when Cade was starting to believe they might actually pull off this impossible thing they were building. He was in a meeting with his accountants, reviewing quarterly projections, when Marcus burst through the door with an expression that made Cade's blood run cold. Boss, we've got a serious problem. Someone leaked your personal information to the press. Not just business dealings, everything. Your connection to Nyla, your mother's new address, the whole structure of your operations. Cade was on his feet before Marcus finished. Source? Unknown. But it's everywhere. News sites, social media, forums. They're painting you as a monster, Nyla as your latest victim, your mother as complicit. It's a coordinated hit designed for maximum damage. Mikhail. That would be my guess. One last revenge before he disappeared. Marcus pulled up his tablet, showed Cade the headlines. They were brutal, salacious, designed to destroy not just his reputation, but Nyla's too. Where is she? At the permit office, final inspection for the bakery. Boss, the press is already there. They're waiting for her. Cade was moving before Marcus finished speaking, grabbing his jacket, heading for the elevator. Get a car, now, and get our lawyers on damage control. I want statements prepared, lawsuits filed, everything. On it. Boss, what are you going to do? I'm going to do what I should have done from the beginning. Stop hiding and tell the truth. The permit office was surrounded by reporters when Cade arrived. Cameras, microphones, journalists shouting questions at anyone who came near. And in the middle of it, Nyla stood frozen on the steps, her face white with shock, her permit papers clutched in her hand. They descended on her the moment she appeared, voices overlapping into chaos. Miss Carter, how long have you been involved with Cade Voss? Did you know about his criminal activities? Are you being coerced? Blink twice if you need help. Is it true he's been using you to launder money? Nyla looked like she was about to be sick. Cade pushed through the crowd, ignoring the cameras swinging toward him, the questions redirecting to their new target. Nyla. He reached her, took her arm gently. Come on, let's go. Mr. Voss, is it true you run a criminal empire? Mr. Voss, are you holding Miss Carter against her will? What's your response to allegations of... Cade stopped, turned to face the cameras. Felt Nyla tense beside him, heard her sharp intake of breath. This was it. The moment where he either hid behind lawyers and denials, or he chose truth. He chose truth. My name is Cade Voss. Some of what you've read about me is true. I inherited my father's business empire, and yes, some of that empire operates outside legal boundaries. I've made decisions that hurt people. I've used power and influence in ways I'm not proud of. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I'm innocent because I'm not. The reporters went silent, shocked by his candor. But here's what else is true. Nyla Carter is a private citizen who works 2 jobs and saved for 3 years to open a bakery. She's not my victim. She's not my accomplice. She's not my money laundering operation. She's a woman I care about deeply, who had the misfortune of meeting me and choosing to see something redeemable underneath all the terrible things I've done. Mr. Voss, I'm not finished. Cade kept his voice level, controlled. You want a story? Here it is. I'm a man trying to be better than my father, trying to build something that doesn't require violence and fear to maintain. And yes, I'm doing that while running an empire I inherited, which means some days I succeed and some days I fail spectacularly at being the person I want to be. He turned to Nyla, saw tears on her face, saw something that might have been pride mixed with the fear. But I'm trying. And the woman standing next to me makes me want to try harder. Makes me want to be worthy of the trust she's placed in me, even though I probably never will be. Cade looked back at the cameras. So if you want to destroy someone, destroy me. Print whatever story you want about my operations, my past, my failures. But leave her out of it. She's done nothing except choose to believe I could be better. And she deserves better than being dragged through the mud because of that choice. Are you saying you're in love with her? Someone shouted. Cade looked at Nyla, saw his entire future in her eyes, saw the choice laid out clearly, protect himself or protect them. Yes, he said simply. I'm in love with her, and I'm done apologizing for it. The cameras went crazy, questions flying from every direction, but Cade ignored them, took Nyla's hand, and walked through the crowd to where Marcus had a car waiting. They didn't speak until they were safely inside, doors locked, windows tinted. You just told the entire world you love me, Nyla said faintly. Yeah, I did. And that you run a criminal empire. That too. Are you insane? But she was starting to smile, tears still streaming down her face. You just destroyed any plausible deniability you had. Admitted everything. Your lawyers are going to murder you. Probably, but I'm tired of lying, tired of hiding, tired of pretending I'm something I'm not. Cade pulled her close, felt her shaking. I meant what I said. Every word. I love you, Nyla, and I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess because of me. I'm not. She pulled back, wiped her eyes. I'm terrified, and I'm probably going to have a full breakdown later, but I'm not sorry. Because you just chose me over self-preservation, over your empire, over everything. You chose truth. Was that the right choice? I don't know, but it was the human choice, the real choice. Nyla kissed him hard, desperate, real. So what happens now? Now we deal with the fallout, together. Cade pulled out his phone, started making calls. Marcus, I need you to contact our lawyers. Tell them I'm prepared to cooperate with any legitimate investigations, but I want immunity deals for everyone in my organization who wasn't directly involved in violence. And I want Nyla's name kept out of everything going forward. Boss, you can't just... I can and I am. Figure out how to make it work. He ended the call, dialed his mother. Mom, I need you to stay inside for a few days. There's going to be media attention. I'm handling it, but I need you safe. Cade, what did you do? Something stupid or something brave. I honestly can't tell the difference anymore. He looked at Nyla, saw her watching him with those sharp, honest eyes. I told the truth. All of it. And now we're going to deal with whatever comes next. I'm proud of you, Elizabeth said softly. Your father would have lied, would have destroyed everyone to protect himself. You chose differently. I'm trying to. The next 72 hours were chaos. The story exploded across every platform, Cade's confession analyzed and dissected from every angle. Some called it a publicity stunt. Some called it damage control. Some called it the most honest thing they'd ever heard from someone in his position. The authorities came calling, of course. Federal investigators, local police, prosecutors, eager to make their careers on his admission. But Cade's lawyers, the expensive ones who knew how to navigate these waters, negotiated carefully. Cooperation in exchange for immunity for his people, restructuring of his business operations, admission to certain crimes, denials of others, the careful dance of legal consequences. Through it all, Nyla stayed. Not in his penthouse, that would have fed the media frenzy, but present, taking his calls, showing up at his office, refusing to let him face it alone. You don't have to do this, Cade said one night, exhausted from another round of lawyer meetings. You could walk away, say you were manipulated. The press would believe you. I could, but I won't. Nyla handed him coffee, the terrible kind from Lou's that she'd started bringing to his office. We're in this together, remember? Partnership, not possession. This isn't what you signed up for. Neither was falling in love with an emotionally unavailable crime boss, but here we are. She sat on the edge of his desk, kicked his chair slightly. Stop trying to push me away to protect me. It's not going to work. The bakery is going to open on schedule with or without a media circus outside. I've worked too hard to let this derail my dream. Nyla's voice was firm. You chose truth. Now you have to trust that it was the right choice, even when it's hard. What if it wasn't? Then we deal with that too. But Cade, you can't live your life afraid of making the wrong choice. Sometimes you just have to choose and see what happens. She made it sound simple. It wasn't. But maybe that was the point. Life wasn't supposed to be a chess game where every move was calculated 3 steps ahead. Sometimes you just had to make a choice and trust yourself to handle the consequences. The investigations dragged on for weeks. Some charges stuck, most didn't. Cade cooperated fully, which surprised everyone, including the prosecutors. He restructured his businesses, divested from anything explicitly illegal, walked the line between legitimate commerce and the gray areas he'd always operated in. It cost him power, money, influence. Some of his people left, unwilling to work in the new structure he was building. Others stayed, loyal to the man rather than the empire. Through it all, one thing remained constant: Nyla. The bakery opened on a Tuesday morning in late spring, and it was nothing like the grand opening Cade could have arranged for her. No celebrities, no press coverage, no fanfare. Just a small storefront in the East District with a hand-painted sign and the smell of fresh bread drifting onto the street. Cade stood across the road, watching as the first customers trickled in. Watching Nyla behind the counter, her face bright with joy, fulfilling the dream she'd worked 3 years to achieve. Marcus appeared beside him. You could have made this bigger for her. One call, one favor, and this place would have been packed. She didn't want bigger. She wanted hers. Cade pulled out his phone, snapped a photo of her through the window. This is what success looks like when you earn it yourself. You proud of her? Beyond words. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the bakery come to life. Boss, I gotta ask, was it worth it? Everything you gave up, everything you lost. Was she worth it? Cade thought about the empire he'd inherited, the power he'd wielded, the fear he'd commanded. Thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, cold, isolated, surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Then he thought about morning coffee at Lou's, about his mother's new condo filled with laughter instead of ghosts, about falling asleep with Nyla curled against him, her breath soft and trusting in the darkness. Yeah, he said, she was worth it, all of it. Marcus nodded, understanding. What's next for you? Honestly, I don't know. Keep rebuilding the business into something I can live with. Help Nyla with the bakery when she'll let me. Visit my mother more than once a month. Try to be the kind of man who deserves the life I'm building. That's a lot of uncertainty for someone who used to control everything. Yeah, turns out uncertainty isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just different. Cade checked his watch. I should go. Told Nyla I'd help with the lunch rush. You? Behind a bakery counter? I'm learning. She says I'm terrible at customer service but decent at dishes. He started across the street, then paused. Marcus? Thanks for sticking around through all this. Where else would I be? Someone's got to keep you from completely losing your edge. Cade laughed, pushed through the bakery door. The bell chimed, and Nyla looked up, her whole face lighting up when she saw him. You came. I said I would. He came around the counter, tied on an apron. Put me to work. You sure? This is going to be nothing like running an empire. Good. I'm tired of empires. I want to build something smaller, something real. He kissed her quickly, tasting sugar and possibility. So what do you need? Table 3 needs coffee. Table 5 wants the daily special. And the dishes are already piling up. On it, Cade Voss, who'd once commanded an empire worth hundreds of millions, spent the rest of the afternoon pouring coffee and washing dishes in a small bakery in the East District. And for the first time in 15 years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The evening crowd thinned around 7. Nyla locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and collapsed into a chair with a satisfied groan. That was insane. Did you see the line? I saw it. You're going to need help if this keeps up. I know. I'm already looking at hiring someone part-time. She looked around her bakery, hers, earned through sweat and savings and stubbornness, and smiled. I can't believe this is real. It's real. You made it real. Cade sat beside her, took her hand. I'm proud of you. Even though I refused to let you help? especially because of that. You didn't need me to build this. You just needed yourself. Nyla leaned against his shoulder, exhausted and happy. So what now? For us, I mean. The media is finally dying down, the investigations are mostly settled. We've survived the chaos. What comes next? Cade thought about that, about the future stretching out ahead of them, uncertain and uncontrolled and completely impossible to predict. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know if we can make this work long term. I don't know if my world and your world can coexist without destroying each other. I don't know if I'm capable of being the partner you deserve. That's a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, but I'm learning to be okay with that. He turned to face her. What I do know is that I love you, that you make me want to be better, that for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something other than power and control, and that has to count for something. It counts for everything, Nyla said softly. Love always counts, even when it's complicated and messy and uncertain. Is it enough? For today? Yeah, for today it's enough. She kissed him, slow and sweet. We'll figure out tomorrow when it gets here. So that's what they did. Figured it out one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. The bakery thrived, became a neighborhood fixture. Cade's restructured business operation stabilized into something he could live with. Still powerful, still influential, but cleaner, less violent, more sustainable. His mother moved into her condo and started actually living the way she'd promised. Book clubs and cooking classes and weekend trips to places she'd always wanted to see. And Cade learned, slowly and imperfectly, how to be human again. How to trust instead of control. How to love instead of possess. How to build a life on something other than fear. It wasn't perfect. They fought about his lingering control issues, about her stubborn independence, about the fundamental tension of trying to merge two incompatible worlds. But they fought honestly, and they always came back to each other. And slowly, incrementally, they built something real. 6 months after the bakery opened, Cade proposed. Not with a massive diamond or a grand gesture or any of the displays of wealth he could have arranged. Just a simple ring, a quiet moment after closing, a question asked with trembling hands and uncertain hope. I know I'm a terrible bet. I know my world is dangerous and complicated and will probably always be a little bit broken. But I love you, Nyla. And I want to spend whatever time we have building something real together. So, will you marry me? Nyla looked at the ring, looked at him, looked at the life they'd built in the ashes of his empire. Yes, she said. But we're doing this my way. Small wedding, no press, just the people who actually matter. Deal? Deal. They married 3 months later in his mother's garden with 24 people who loved them for who they were, not what they represented. No empire, no fanfare, no performance. Just 2 imperfect people choosing each other one more time. Standing at that altar, holding Nyla's hands, Cade thought about his father, about the empire built on fear, about the legacy of violence and control, about the cage he'd inherited and thought he could never escape. And he realized his father had been wrong about everything that mattered. Power wasn't worth the isolation, control wasn't worth the emptiness, and fear was a poor foundation for anything that was supposed to last. Love, it turned out, was stronger than all of it. Messier, more complicated, infinitely more uncertain, but stronger. Real in ways that power could never be. I love you, he whispered as they were pronounced married. I know, Nyla whispered back. Now kiss me before your mother cries harder and we have to pause for tissues. So he kissed her, his wife, his partner, the woman who'd walked into his office demanding his ID and somehow ended up demanding his heart. And for the first time in his entire life, Cade Voss felt truly, completely free. Because love, real love, doesn't cage you. It sets you free. Free to be flawed and uncertain and human. Free to fail and try again. Free to choose something other than survival, something better than power. Free to just be. And in a world built on control and fear and endless strategy, that freedom was the most dangerous, most radical, most transformative thing he'd ever experienced. It didn't solve everything. His past didn't disappear. His empire didn't evaporate. The complications didn't magically resolve. Real life doesn't work that way. But he faced it all with someone who saw him, truly saw him, and chose to stay anyway. That was the real victory. Not power or wealth or control, just being seen, being chosen, being loved for exactly who he was, flaws and all. And as the evening wore on and the celebration continued around them, Cade held his wife's hand and thought about all the lessons he'd learned in the past year. That trust is stronger than control. That honesty beats strategy. That vulnerability takes more courage than violence. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love over power, connection over isolation, hope over certainty. That you can inherit a nightmare and still choose to build a dream. That it's never too late to become someone better than who you were. And that the most valuable things in life, love, trust, connection, purpose, can't be bought or controlled or commanded. They can only be earned, one honest moment at a time. Cade Voss had spent 15 years building an empire on fear. In the end, he learned it only took one honest woman and a willingness to try to build something infinitely more valuable on truth. Not a perfect life. Not a smooth journey, not a fairy tale ending. Just a real one. And real, it turned out, was more than enough.